Hello, everyone. I am so happy to be back here for another week of Crushing Krisis Live, Crushing Comics Live, actually. And you wouldn't know it was another week if you had not been here for last week, because we had many technical difficulties, and that has been sent to the archives. So we will see if we can make it through this week. I have tested my internet every possible way. And I have learned that I need to keep an eye on the chat because you will tell me if things have gone haywire. So how are we doing today? Is everything good? Are we happy? Is it a good Sunday afternoon? I see Jess immediately causing chaos in the chat. 2 minutes late, you seem unorganized. Well, just wait until you see me try to respond to all the chat messages. Then you will know just how unorganized I am. Let me just say hello to a few folks and then we are going to get underway. James thinks Max might know more than me about X-Men, depending on the era of X-Men and the issues of X-Men. That could be true. Moonin, hello. Good afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you are. Hello to Captain Underpants. Late because I was remembering all of the moving parts here and trying to improve them ever so slightly since last week. Thank you, Ryan, for being here. And Max expressing my true feelings on X-Men. That is a torture device disguised as comic books that will slowly lure you in and then crush your soul. We have Immortal Ibsy from Near Mint Condition fandom. We have my good friend Larry's Library. Larry, I haven't done one with you for a while. I hope you're going to be on the one that is later this week. And now I'm Omar levels of late. Oh no. Edwin, thank you for coming by my channel. It is great to be on my own live stream. You know, this I think is going to help me talk less on the other live streams because I can say anything that I want to everybody here all I want. Fifth of Jack Gaming, taking a quick break from your filming to chill. I am good. You know, it has been a rough week. And I have to say, for those of you who saw last week and saw me do my monologue about resolve, then repair, then recover. I had to put that into practice so many times this week because first I got an eye infection in the middle of reading these like hundreds of comics I need to read for all the stuff we're doing this week. And you know, my first impulse is I'm a big fan of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Master Shake. He just takes something and throws it on the ground, it explodes. That's how I get when something gets in the way of the thing that I am hyper fixated on doing. So I just was like, oh, this is all gonna suck. And then I was like, you know what? Repair. I went to the chemist, which is what the pharmacist is called here. I got eye drops. Recover. I took it easy on my eye for a day. Now we're fine. We just don't have as much eyeliner on as usual, as a slight nod to the problem. Then yesterday, just when I thought everything was great, I poured a glass of milk into my laptop. But you know what? I just have that mantra set for this year. Resolve. What are we resolving? We're still going to do the show today. Repair. What do? Put my laptop next to the dehydrator. And then recover. Just move on with my day. So that's not my monologue today. I just wanted to answer the question of how my week has been. And it has not been the best week ever. But you know what? I'm still here and you're still with me. And that makes me very, very happy. So let me just tell you what we're going to do today. That was a little chit chat about the past week. I'm going to talk about some stuff on Crushing Krisis. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's wrong with X-Men. It's not just a clickbait title. I have some thoughts. Then we are going to talk about my top 10 comics of the year so far, which is crazy. We're only 2 weeks into the year, but I am already power ranking my top 10. And then we are going to go through new comics. I read, I think, over 30, almost 40 new comics this week. Plus, I have all the new releases, and I think I have it in a slightly better format than last week. So we're going to see if in under 2 hours, I can do all of those things and also keep you all entertained. Oh, Josh, not just 3, my friend, because let's talk about where else I'm going to be appearing this week. If you don't get a chance to stay through all this, or if you want to stay through all this, and then you also want to see more of me. Some people have been known to do that. Tomorrow, let me add this to the stage. You got to be patient with me because I'm new at this stuff. Tomorrow, we are having, for the first time in 2025 and for the first time in over 6 months, a brand new Map My X. And look who's behind the X there. Look who's on all the covers. It is going to be Magik. And it's going to be Magik because I will be joined on Near Mint Condition tomorrow, I believe at 6 o'clock at night, US Eastern Time, by both Odefell and Riley. So the whole gang is back together for Map My X. Then on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, I will be on my good friend Omnidog's Vault for our monthly jamming on comics. I actually just made a batch of jam. Maybe I will do a live tasting. And then on Thursday, there's our next Evergreen show, our DC event Evergreen list. And it is going to be a wild one. We have a huge amount of people, and DC has so many iconic events. So I really think that one is going to be pretty fun. Pretty fun. So that is what is on deck for the week. Just a reminder, y'all, if you are a fan of me here on the YouTube, if you use my website, I do have a Patreon. It's just patreon.com/krisis. And it is only $1 or $2 a month at the 2 lowest levels in US dollars. And it grants you at $1 access to every X-Men guide that I have and a bunch of other Marvel guides. And at $2, all of my guides. It really, really helps when things go wrong. Due to the pouring the milk into the laptop, all of the ports on this side are dead. So I had to get a new USB hub in a hurry. That cost money. Things cost money. And also Crushing Krisis costs a lot of money to run when you run a big website. I see now why most people just try to stay on YouTube, because when you're doing other things, it costs money. YouTube, other than streaming software, is pretty affordable. So let's just hit some comments real quick, and then we will see what's going on. Only 6 months, you made it all sound like years. Well, it had been, I think, over a year since we did the last Map My X, and then right in time for the Wolverine movie, we squeezed one in right before Omar went to Japan, I think. But it's really hard to nail down all of our schedules. Odefeld did so much traveling for cosplay at the end of last year that she was like in a different hotel room, it felt like, every Thursday at all the different conventions, and it was really hard to do. Magic number 1, I don't want to give it all away now, but I have a lot of opinions on that. Will I be cosplaying? Somebody might cosplay as Magik for the stream, Kyle. We'll see. You know, James, I cannot warranty if Riley is going to be there on time. I am not in charge of them. So Larry I did have to say no to the Evergreen stream, as I'm just not enough of a DC fan to contribute. You know, I a lot of times have imposter syndrome for these Evergreen streams, and it leads me to do so much reading. The Batman one, I think you remember, I think I read like 100 issues of Batman just that week. DC events, even if I don't know them all by heart, I have a pretty good grounding, and I feel that I will be able to swing pretty hard there. And thank you so much for saying my guides are essential in the reading orders. You know, I always say this, I just try to put it together in the logical order that it works in my head. And if I don't have a good way to explain it or for it to be in my head, then it's not time to do a guide for that thing. Not until I figure it out do I do that. So let me close that window. All right. So I think we're going to move on now to my little monologue. What's wrong with X-Men? And so, gosh, do I have a monologue thing? Let's create a banner. Let's call it Moment of Krisis. Look at me learning how to use the tools in StreamYard. It's our moment of crisis. So we are now 6 months in to X-Men From the Ashes, which is the era of X-Men that is following Krakoa, which had a lot of ups and downs and made a lot of fans happy. A lot of fans felt like the X-Men were not heroic enough, or that it was too much about them being separate from humans and on their island. I've been reading the X-Men a long time, longer than perhaps some of you have been alive. And I've read every single X-Men comic, at least from 2008 to present. I've certainly read just about everything from 2004, but sometimes some little mini-series snuck in there and kind of slid past me. And I have to say, I don't really think this new era of X-Men is hitting very well. What's interesting is it seems to be hitting really well for fans who just want to pick up a comic and have those iconic X-Men in it. They're not any less fans than you or me who are truly deep in X-Men, but I see a lot of people who are really liking the book. And then when you interrogate why, because my thing is interrogate the comics, they're like, well, the X-Men were in it and it was a fight and they looked good, which is a great reason to like X-Men comics. But if you're somebody who really knows these characters well and like knows their voices, especially with that Uncanny X-Men issue this week, which took a beating on social media, even Comics XF, who are usually pretty as X-Men friendly as they couldn't be, Dr. Anna Papard really had a lot of not negative, but very critical things to say about it. And I think that's the thing that's wrong with this period of X-Men. It's very toyetic. It's got all the characters you want to see and all the team names that we recognize, but none of them have the right reason to exist. And I think if we look at the X-Men runs that we all really like, whether that's Cy Sperrier's X-Men Legacy, whether that's Brian Bendis's Uncanny X-Men, whether that's Jerry Duggan's Marauders, the really good X-Men runs of the past 15 years tend to have a really elemental thesis statement. And I think that really began in the wake of Messiah Complex, when they realized this line had become so unruly and so hard to parse until House of M. And the gift that House of M gave it was narrowing holding the line enough that you really kind of each book means something. And I felt like every book meant something at the beginning of Utopia. Every book meant something heading into and out of Avengers versus X-Men. And periods where we lose that definition tends to be periods where it's harder to read and enjoy X-Men. I think right now the books are very centralized on casts and creators. I don't know if they mean something. Uncanny X-Men, what does it mean? Rogue has school kids, feels she must do X-Men. What does Cyclops mean? Cyclops in Alaska, they're kind of the bad guys. I don't think that the meaning is elemental. I think NYX got a little bit closer. Young mutants trying to find their way in the wake of Krakoa. I don't know that NYX is always good, but I really think X-Men comics are best when each title has a very specific one-sentence pitch line, not only for our enjoyment, but so that in stores, the people behind the counter can sell it that way. Oh, this is blank. And I think right now, the pitch lines are muddled. The pitch lines don't really work with the casts in the books. And the cast and the pitch lines don't really work with the titles. You've heard me say this before if you saw last week or some other shows. I don't think the X-Force pitch line of Forge tries to solve what's broken with the world, I don't think that fits with X-Force, and I don't think that fits with Betsy and Rachel being on the team, even though Betsy and Rachel are two of my favorite characters. So I think what's wrong with X-Men right now is it feels very editorially driven with a lot of great intent on the casts, the creators, but then nobody stopped and said, how do we make these books really feel different from each other? Right now, all of the team books just feel like a bunch of different X-Men doing X-Men-y things, and they don't really feel like they have a lot of distinction to them, except for X-Factor, and that's in a bad way. But the good thing, what's right about X-Men comic books right now, is all the solo titles. I think every single one of the solo titles, almost to a single one, is better than every single one of the team titles. And we're going to talk about that because there's a few of them in the mix today, including one that was a very interesting read. So what's wrong with X-Men? I think you cannot boil the team titles down to something iconic enough. I think it's hurting the line. And I think because of that, they're doing so much heavy lifting with character voices that sound out of character or plot points that don't seem to fit the characters that a lot of X-Men fans are feeling a little bit alienated. That's what I think is wrong with the line. So that is today's moment of crisis. I don't know. I sometimes do moment of crisis if you think back to when I did my unpacking videos where I just talk about like the weather or like ghosts or something. But I thought since it's towards the beginning of the video, you might appreciate if it was actually about comics. So let me just see what you all had to say about that. And then we're going to keep going. Yeah, I think another thing wrong is it's too many titles at once. Look, I'm a glutton for X-Men titles. Gimme Man After Midnight. Gimme all the X-Men titles. But it's a lot all at once. And I think that's also adding to the like, how do we sell this? I saw Ryan Higgins, who's the owner of Comics Conspiracy in California, a really prominent store online and one that I visited, a pretty successful store, say Marvel has this tendency right now of putting out so many miniseries and not even thinking about who is it for? How can I pitch it to somebody from the register and know that they're the person who's supposed to buy the book? I think the X-Men books are so focused on these are for all X-Men fans, and they're not differentiating from each other as much. It's too many titles and it's hard to differentiate. I agree exactly what I just said. The miniseries don't matter. Double Z 2423 says agrees. There are too many titles. Sentinels is my favorite. Oh, we'll hear some thoughts on that from me, but I'm really glad you like it. I want people to like comics. You can like all of my least favorite comics and I will still love you because you love comics. Glad you actually asked people why they think it's good. You can usually tell if it's really good or not by what they say makes it good. So many people just like something for existing. You know what? That's fine. If something makes you happy, I'm not the happiness police. If something really pleases you and makes you happy and you're just happy it exists, good for you. You're going to hear from me in a couple books today that I'm just happy it exists. But I do think it's good to interrogate why are we happy it exists? There's one book this week. It's not the best book, but it's just my favorite trope. I love it. I love the trope. And so I love the book. And that's something that I interrogated when I finished it. I was like, it feels marginal. And yet I'm so satisfied. And I just encourage people to do that. Like if you are mostly reading comics for amazing art or amazing colors, as I often do, and that made you really love the comic, y'all, that is a great reason to love a comic. But sometimes the thing that like twists my nipples a little bit is when you see somebody give something 4 stars and then they're like, yeah, it was kind of sucky. I didn't really like the story. It was kind of slow. I'm like, well, then that's probably not 4 stars. Like interrogate the connection between why you liked it. If you did truly like it enough to give it 4 stars, maybe be like, it was slow and weird or whatever, but the art was gorgeous. Well, then that's your reason to give it 4 stars. X-Men's a comic of big ideas and none of the current writers are big idea kind of writers. Rich, I think you nailed it. I think McKay has that capability. I don't know if he's delivering that on X-Men right now. There's no direction. And the direction really is kind of like mutants are hated again, kind of, sort of. And it just feels like, I know that's always going to be part of the brand and we're never going to get rid of it. Just like Parker Luck with Spider-Man. But it just feels like X-Men comics at this point in the year of our Lord 2025 have to be more than just being hated and feared. feel like maybe 3 strong titles would have been better, but got to make that cash. Yeah, I think Hickman had the right idea, Josh, at the beginning of Krakoa, where he was like, we're just going to do 6, and then one's going to end, and we're going to replace it, and there's maybe going to be 1 miniseries, because that was a period where you could look at every one of those titles and say exactly what that title was about, and I really think that helped with fan excitement, and that really helped them all sell. I agree. X-Men's feeling very editorially mandatey. What kind of laptop do I have, Larry? A broken one. I usually use Macs, but it's so expensive. But I'm somebody who really fusses with my system a lot. And I have a lot of peripherals. And so I like that the Mac operating system, even though it's been upgraded many times, it does all the same stuff it has done since I started using Macs in like 2011, 2012. It's the same. It has a few more bells and whistles, but everything can be found in the same place. I can alter almost all the same things I could always alter. And I feel like I'm too old to relearn a new version of Windows and get my computer to do what I want. I live and breathe on my computer. That's why I'm not a cell phone person. I'm on my computer like 20 hours a day sometimes. So it needs to feel like home. And I'm not a big enough nerd to use Linux. And sometimes I just need stuff to work off the shelf. So I am a Mac person. Gosh, you all had so much awesome to say about X-Men. I just can't get every single thing. Adrienne Mendoza says, glad I'm back. I'm glad you're here to see me back. I remember my show back in the Krakoa era, and then I stopped uploading. I haven't read X-Men since the end of Krakoa. Well, hopefully today we'll find a couple of things to recommend to you. It really got to a point at the end of Krakoa, or end of me broadcasting on Krakoa, which was just in the middle in 2021, that I didn't feel good about my whole YouTube presence being about X-Men anymore. The books didn't excite me at that moment in Krakoa. It had been right after X Factor 10, which had been like a real strange moment. And also, I felt like people were thinking my whole brand was X-Men. And so then if I said, oh, well, X-Men sucks right now, people were like, well, that must suck to be you since you're all about X-Men. And I'm like, well, really, I read like between 2,000 and 4,000 comics a year. Only a tiny fraction of that is X-Men. So it started to feel really kind of like fake that it was all X-Men. Kane telling me maybe I need to look at Windows 11. Maybe there's a conversation we can continue on to Jammin' with Comics with Jess. Talk about what kind of laptops and operating systems we all use. Okay, so that was my monologue. Now I'm going to let's quickly take a look at Crushing Krisis. So I'm going to share my screen. Don't worry, we are getting to all of the new comics of the week. I just have a little bit more of a plan this week, I think. All right, so add to the stage. How do I make it full? Well, that's not helpful. Okay, well, I guess that's as wide as it's going to get. So on Crushing Krisis this week, this is the homepage of Crushing Krisis, which only has new posts. So generally that's all the new releases posts, and I usually post them over the weekend. But what's this? A new guide to Red Hulk. That's right. In the guide lineup here, we now have, where is our Red Hulk in the guide lineup, because I launched this to patrons last week. I even finally gave Hulk his own little icon. Red Hulk is really interesting, not only because he's about to be in a movie, but because he's a character that was made from an existing character that was a really big surprise in 2008. And it really caught on. And I get the feeling originally he wasn't going to be a primary Hulk. He was just there as the antagonist. But he wound up running for 57 issues, 58 if you count as 0.1. 62 if you count the Circle of Venom crossover. Then he wound up leading Thunderbolts in Marvel Now. Then they kind of put him away because of the kind of end of the Hulks thing that Jerry Duggan did at the end of Marvel Now. But then Marvel made another Red Hulk, which they kind of needed to for longevity because he couldn't keep being that same character because that character has his own place in the universe. And that Red Hulk was Al Ewing's Red Hulk, which is Robert Maverick. And he was really fun. He pretty much just exists in US Avengers and then in Avengers No Surrender, although they just brought him back in the new Sam Wilson title. And the main Red Hulk, and I won't spoil his identity if by some reason you don't know, is back next month in a new book by Benjamin Percy and Geoff Shaw. So this guide was about 500 appearances. I think it took me about 7 or 8 hours. It was fun to do because I've read a lot of these comics out of sequence since I kind of just arrived back in comics in 2010. It was fun to see his whole story. That is one of my favorite things about making guides. And so this is a $1 Patreon level guide. If everybody were to join one day at $1, you get to see that guide. And just a reminder, that is patreon.com/krisis. Because that is what pays for all of this nonsense. Okay. Let's see. I'm just checking in on the comments. Don't see Omar anywhere. Wouldn't it be funny if I got to have Omar on this channel and give Omar strikes and kick Omar out of the stream? I would never do that, of course, because I'm a nicer person than Omar. I'm not. That's a lie. Omar is one of the nicest people I've ever worked with or talked to or been friends with in my life. Okay. Here's the other thing. I think Oh, did I make a banner for this? I think every so often. No, I didn't. I'm going to put up this banner that says, ask me anything. And that will be your time to really wing questions at me, because when I'm in the middle of going through all the new comics, I don't always see all the questions. So if I throw this up, it means we've got like a limited time where I'm just going to answer just about anything. And so we're going to try that right now. Quick, ask me anything. And then I'm going to get into comics. Okay. And go. Let's see. Well, I guess I'd probably have to leave it up and then talk first. You know what? I'm going to leave it up while I do the top 10 comics. And then we're going to come back and see what you asked me. Growth. I'm showing growth. Okay. We're going to remove that from the screen. We're going to share something else. I'm really happy that we did that test one last week for those of you that were there, because I am the kind of person who needs a live run through sometimes. And I think without the live run through, I really didn't have a good idea of what everything was going to look like. And you guys couldn't see the thumbnails, and that bothered you, rightfully so. And so I really think that I'm a little bit better shape. This is my 2025 comic series power ranking. I'm going to do this every week that I'm on, and I'm just ranking, sometimes on vibes, sometimes a pure rating, what my top 10 comics of 2025 are right now. And then as soon as we're done this, then I'm going to get your Ask Me Anything question. So number 10, Shazam. I think it's a really good YA title, totally delightful. Number 9, Poison Ivy. It has such a vibe. I think Wilson is the perfect voice for Poison Ivy. Absolutely started at number 1. It's a fantastic comic book. The art by Marcia Takara is amazing, and Arif Prianto's colors are absolutely beautiful and painterly. It's a little slow right now, but the voice is still there. Number 8 is actually number 8 of the Ultimates, but that is a comic that I really, really enjoy. I think the past couple issues have been a little softer than the first 6, but it's still probably one of the best big ideas comics at Marvel. Number 7 for me is one we're going to talk about today, Parliament of Rooks. It's a little bit cheating because this was a Comixology original last year, but we'll get more into that when I talk about it. Number 6, The Serpent in the Garden, another book we're going to talk about today. It's actually in the Hellboy universe, but let's save that for my minute to talk about later. I think this would be number 5. I have to number them next time. Jed McKay's Avengers. I love it. It's big. It's iconic. It's fun. It's toyetic. It feels like Justice League or Authority. Marvel doesn't usually do team books like that. I'm into it. Number 4, a book we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the Maynard. I'm obsessed with this. New Crisis obsession alert. Number 3, Batman Dark Patterns. Maybe it's number 2. I've lost track. Number 3, Batman Dark Patterns, which we're going to talk about today. It's a Batman Year 3 book, sort of. Number 2, I was right, Living in Hell, another book we're going to start today. I am a sucker for angels and demon stuff, and this one sucked me in. It had my first perfect issue, I think, that I've read in the new year. And number 1, still holding strong despite another week of new comics, and this one didn't come out this week, is Absolute Superman from Jason Aaron, Rafa Sandoval, and Ulysses Ariola. I think it's the most beautiful and most hopeful comic in comics right now. It is my number 1 book in the power ranking for the year. So that will give you a little tickler of the new stuff I'm going to go through. But now let's go to the Ask Me Anything. Okay, let's see. Larry talking about Windows. Omar talking about X-Men. Did anything. Favorite food. I love a good baked salmon and any kind of a marinade. I also really learned how to make a Cajun salmon on the stovetop that I really, really love. Anything with salmon. I love sushi. I think I could eat sushi at every single meal for the rest of my life and be totally happy. And I also love just a really plain basil and mozzarella or pesto and mozzarella sandwich. That's what I call my travel sandwich. If I could get it like an au gratin or something, every time I take a plane or a train or an automobile, I like to have it. So those are probably my 3 things. If I could have sushi, salmon, and pesto sandwiches for the rest of my life, I think I'd be golden. There's other things I really love. And of course, ice cream. You've never met anybody in your life who can put away as much ice cream as me, which is a problem on many different dimensions, but also ice cream. Make a team for X-Men exit. No, too big scope, Max. That's not an asking anything. That's a whole show. You're pitching a show right now. Do I read anything on tablet or strictly paper? I actually read mostly on screen, tablet, or computer screen. I only read on paper for like archival stuff. I'm very, very rarely reading a comic for the first time on paper, but I can tease something about this week's Jammin' on Comics with Jess. I've been challenged to read this paper copy, which I've yet to read, of my favorite thing, Wonder Woman, Historia, on paper, not on digital, because I've just got it sitting here and I paid for it, so I should appreciate it on paper. That will be Tuesday at 7 o'clock on OmniDog's Vault. When was the last time I visited our city of brotherly love? I've not been back to the States since I left, which was like August 20. Well, actually, I left Philadelphia before that, probably like the beginning of August 2017. And I haven't been back. I will probably be, maybe, hopefully, if I don't do anything really wrong, getting my New Zealand citizenship this year. And so then travel becomes a more open plot because you have to be in New Zealand for a certain amount of days out of every calendar year to count towards citizenship. And now that I'm so close, I don't want to go away for a month and then like set the clock back even further because I'm so close. I really wanted to go to the States in April this year, but I think it's just gonna have to wait until later on in the year. Should we do a Map My Bronze Age Batman show? I would have to read all of that, Jess. I really don't know that much about Bronze Age Batman, but you know, with Joey Hines from the DC Finest group, I wonder if I can put that in the chat. The DC Finest group. Joey and I made this amazing spreadsheet. I'm not going to show it because it just strikes me as one of the things that if I try to do it, it's going to crash the stream. And I don't want to do that. But let me see if I can. I'm going to put the group in the chat. There's this Facebook group. It's written by, or it's run by Curtis from Evergreen Marvel. And that is the Epic Marvel chat. Or I'm sorry, not Epic Marvel, the DC Finest group. And so Joey Hines and I made a spreadsheet where we're mapping every single line. And I don't think we've mapped Bronze Age Batman yet. I think we've mapped Golden and Crisis forward, but the goal is to pre-map every line and see if we're right. It's harder than Epics because they don't have volume numbers. Not a question, but I love my stream with Aussieverse and I watched it 5 times. Oh, I think, Javier, I said the best thing I've ever said on a stream on that stream when I was really talking about really learning why you love comics. Right from best to worst, Omar and Omnidog. Best, Curtis. Am I enjoying Phoenix? I like it because I think Gene does a cosmic scope. I think Stephanie Phillips has been getting better at the voice, and that really matters. Okay, speed round, because then we got to keep going. Are there any Marvel or DC characters I can't get into reading? Hal Jordan. Poison Ivy's been slow. Yeah, it's getting a little slow. Hold on. Curious, what's the reason you moved from the States to New Zealand? That's a longer story. I promise I will recap it at some point, but I think I talk about it a lot back on the unpacking videos. Did I ever say that neurodivergent with ADHD? It's a long story, but we're going to go ahead with yes to neurodivergent, probable ADHD, and then some other neurodivergence as well. I'm a real hyper focuser and I'm a real obsessive person. So it affects my reading. So I have trouble just jumping in. A couple times this week, you're going to hear me in the new comics be like, well, I just jumped in and took a plunge, which is really hard for me because I need everything to be perfect. Not only like all the comics in the perfect reading order, but also like my reading experience, the lighting in the room, the size of the screen. Like I just get so focused on everything being perfect. And I think that really sometimes detracts. All right. The multiple X-Men Omni lines, actually, that's one more thing I can tease, and then we're going to have to pause the Ask Me Anything, is that we are doing a discussion, not a Map My X, about that new Blue Gold Omnibus on Near Mint Condition next week. So I do not want to spoiler that too much, and we're still negotiating on the time, but it is happening next week. That's right. How does it feel to be stabbed in the back, Omar? I love you so much, bro. Okay. So now I did so much work this week to get this in better shape than it was last week. So just give me a moment. I'm taking the Ask Me Anything banner off. Gosh, this is really hard to do when you're self-producing. Okay. And now we're going to talk about this week's new releases. Look at me getting to it right at the half-hour mark. It's almost like I made plans this week. Okay. So give me a moment. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay. New releases. Here we go. Now, should I do the timer? Do we like the timer or not, y'all? Honest answers only. Do we like the timer? Because I think it adds a little bit of drama. And if you think it's funny to have me get stuck on the timer, I will do the timer. But if it's really just like distracting us, then I will not do the timer. So you tell me if the timer is a good enough idea that we should keep doing it. I'm flash poll right now. I'm going to timer work fine. No timer. Yes, I like it. We need two more votes. Oh, Omar, your question was next. I'll go back to Omar Reese's question while you guys tell me if we should do the timer or not. Have I ever read Wicca? No, I have not read Wicca. I will put that on my to check out list. Fantasy. I love fantasy stories. If you like fantasy stuff that's like a little subversive, there's this book I love. I don't have the physical one because it's in the mail right now, but it's called By the Horns. It's from, who's that little publisher? Scout. And it's about a fantasy world with unicorns and stuff. But the concept is, what if it was like you were in Final Fantasy and to like get better at something, you had to go kill a bunch of rats. And then you just have all these rats. You come back to the town, you're like, here are my 25 rats. And it's about kind of like what happens when you have to go kill a unicorn, because in those worlds in Final Fantasy, sometimes you have to fight creatures that are ostensibly good. Really, really clever, gorgeous art. I kickstarted to get both of the hardcovers. They just sent me the PDF, so I'm really excited to read it because I'm like a whole series behind, but really, really fun. And I'm going to try to remember Wicca. Okay. Yes, timer, good either way. Oh, you did like By the Horns. Awesome. And you mentioned it on another stream. Okay, we're going to try timer. And then if it gets messy, then I'll just be messy. How will that be any different than normal, you might ask? So let me get the timer. Omar's like, wait, there's technology? There's a timer? What are they doing? Well, we'll see, Omar. We'll see. Okay. So let me share my screen and get ready, because there were so many comics this week, and I have brought some opinions, my friends. Entire screen. Share. To the stage. Look at that. The only thing is I wish I could make me... That's good. Because yeah, I don't know. I mean, you want to see the comic, but you want to see me. Maybe we'll switch back and forth. Okay, here we go. 2000 AD to me is like, it's the Mario bonus stage where you just get to jump around. There's lots of coins. If I make it through my whole pull that week, then I get to read 2000 AD. I did not make it through my whole pull this week, so I did not get to read 2000 AD. By the way, I'm not going to see your comments as much while I'm going through this, so I'm going to stop like every 10 books and then see what your comments are. All right, Absolute Batman. Absolute Batman this week was by the team of Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta plotting, but it was art from Gabriel Hernandez Walta, colors from Frank Martin, and letters from Clayton Clowes. I think this was not one of the strongest art efforts from Gabriel Hernandez Walta I've seen, but more than that, this book just did not work for me this week. We know I don't love Batman. I don't love Scott Snyder. So I think your mileage will vary with me, but it tried to do a Batman origin. And some of it was funny. Like, it was really, really campy. At one point, he's like, I'm going to be a vampire and actually wear teeth. And you can see that he's, well, maybe you can't, but he's got like little vampire teeth there. But I just feel like Scott Snyder already had the chance to do his Year Zero Batman, and he already has done a year one type story, and he's already done Court of Owls. I don't know if this was different enough to make it feel like it was Absolute Batman. If anything, it made me feel like it wasn't Absolute Batman. Also, there's this long conceit that Bruce is like building a bridge for a school project, but he decides to theme the bridge after a bat, and it just doesn't feel like a kid talking. It just feels like Scott Snyder monologuing. Wasn't a fan. All new Venom. So this was, oh gosh, I started myself at 58 seconds. I need to put the timer on a loop. All new Venom was by a team of Al Ewing, Carlos Gomez, Frank D'Armata, and VC's Clayton Cowles on letters. This book, I don't know. It's very, very pretty. Had a really funny gag about Philly cheesesteaks, which made me happy. And John's, right? Al Ewing did his research about my Philly linguistic legacy. But this mystery of who is Venom, it feels too small. Like right now, the candidates are just Luke Cage, and they kind of did a mashup of the Philly Fanatic and Gritty. Love it. Right now, the candidates are like Luke Cage, that editor of the Daily Bugle, Rick Jones, and Madame Mask. I'm like, that's it? That's not fun. Make a bigger mystery. And then I feel like Ewing is really leaning hard on just having Eddie Brock's kid, Dylan Brock, just clowning on MJ and Paul to be like, we all hate Paul. Like, that's not a comic. You need to do a little more than that. It looks great. I love Ewing doing a smaller plot, but I really think our man Al Ewing could maybe use a vacation. I don't need the whole time for this. Alligator Loki, I finally read it for the first time. It's one of these Marvel Unlimited books that you can read for free on Marvel Unlimited. There are seasons of new issues every so often. This book is by, who's it by? I think it's written by Alyssa Wong with art by Bob Quinn. It's fine. It's not as funny as the Jeff comics from Kelly Thompson. And then it also just, sometimes the art is like confusing. Like if you're going to do a quick gag comic that has 12 pages, the gags got to be quick and the action's got to track, but it feels like a lot of pinups. And Bob Quinn's fantastic. I love him on X Factor. I've loved him in the past. It's just not that funny to me. Okay. So this one I didn't read, Altered States Purgatory. It's a Dynamite book. Altered States is their new brand that they're going to have be like their Elseworlds. And, mommy doesn't have time to read every single Elseworlds comic that everybody does from every single publisher in the world. So that I do love Dynamite and I love my cheesecakey 90s bad girls, but I'm not going to read alternate universes. Vampiro is weird enough. All right, I'm going to do Spider-Man and then I'll see what's going on in the chat. So this is Amazing Spider-Man, The Eight Deaths. It was by the team of Joe Kelly, writing Cafu as the artist who I love, Frank D'Armata colors, who I love coloring Cafu. They were the team on Christopher Cantwell's Iron Man and letters from Joe Caramagna. So I really like the concept of this arc, which is Doctor Doom has to achieve something as the Sorcerer Supreme. And Doctor Doom is like, F that, I'm just going to have Spider-Man do it for me. So Spider-Man goes to Doctor Strange and he's like, should I actually do this? Can I live through it? And Doctor Strange is like, yeah, begrudgingly, I guess I'll help you. It's really, really clever. If you don't like when Spider-Man has something else added, like if he's Spider-Man but a spy or Spider-Man and mystical, then you're not going to like it. I find it very charming. I like when Spider-Man does different things occasionally. But the concept is every time he faces one of these villains, he is going to die, and we know he's going to die, and he's got like 8 Mario-style extra lives, but they all are different challenge. But this one was just misery porn. He basically died by being sad about other people dying. I just think go back and read issue 61 and 62. They were so fun and pleasing and cool. And I really like those. Okay. So before we continue, let's see what people have been doing in the comments. James Abel didn't really like the writing or the art in Absolute Batman before. I usually like Gabriel Walta. I just didn't think it was his finest showing. Could have been the colors. You need to catch up on Absolute Superman, Lance, if you haven't caught up on it already. All new Venom 2, enjoying this mystery. I do love Clue. It's my favorite movie, James Abel, as we know. And so, yeah, I just wanted more mystery. Like, make it more fun. It just doesn't seem like the 4 candidates are as fun. Let's everybody learn how to correctly say hoagie, like a Philadelphia is hoagie. Hoagie. Hoagie? Hoagie. That's how you say it in Philadelphia. Don't even get me started on water. Off topic, but the new favorite RPDR contestant is Jules Sparkles due to the boy mode hair. I've not watched new RuPaul's Drag Race because I've been so intense in the comics. Plus, I knew it was a 2-part premiere, so I'm going to watch it probably later this week. Also, I'm really, really sad about the Vivian passing away, which I learned on stream last week. Yeah. Hey, it's One Wheelchair X. I love you, friend. He can't say to watch, but popping to say, hey, I hope this live stream has less technical issues. Me too. Hopefully it's been clear this whole time. You'll tell me if I start getting fuzzy. Reaper XC, who always shows up for me. Do I think Marvel will add Bloodhunt event to the death of... Okay, so there's on your main condition today, there was an omnibus announced that is Doctor Strange by Jed MacKay. And it doesn't have the other Doctor Strange, Death of Doctor Strange one-shots because it wasn't by Jed MacKay. And it doesn't have any of Bloodhunt. I don't think they'll put Bloodhunt in it because it was kind of a Doctor Strange event, but it's mostly an Avengers event. I would want to see it in an Avengers by Jed MacKay omnibus. I think the Doctor Strange issues explain themselves just fine. But it seems like borderline malicious to not put the Doctor Strange, Death of Doctor Strange one-shots in there because where else are they ever going to be? Like, that's the story. It's the story of the Death of Doctor Strange. If they're not good enough for the omnibus, maybe you shouldn't have released them in the first place, Marvel. So. Good evening to you, Derek Tyler. Do I think most modern comics read better digitally? I don't know because I've never read them on paper. I occasionally will buy an image book that I really, really love on paper if it's recent and I really, really dug it. But I really try not to have physical comics newer than 2015 in my house. I love them. They're great. There's nothing against them. I just have decided to specialize my physical collection on pre-2015 and my digital collection on post-2015. We could debate if Spider-Man has been misery porn for the last decade, for sure. Absolute Superman sold. Water. It's like water. Can I get a glass of water? Do you like water ice? And that was beaten out of me physically in college theater. Not a fan of digital. It's good to see if it's worth it to buy a physical copy. Here's the thing. Because I'm such an art person, Pidima, I like to, and because I'm going blind, I like to zoom in really, really far on the art and get really close to it and see details. And physical, it's like, oh, well, then you get into that game. I'm going to buy the omnibus. I'm going to buy the absolute. I'm going to buy the gallery edition. No, just give me a high-res digital file. But that's just me. Other people could be different. All right, so I think I made it to the bottom of the chat. Owen Stewart, RIP's The Vivian. Just such an amazing performer. I'm glad we have so much documented. If you want to see something really funny, and you don't know a lot of drag, search on YouTube for it's Monet Exchange and The Vivian at like charm school, or they're learning like manners, maybe you type manners. It's so funny. It's these two raucous drag queens trying to learn how to be polite, and it's just so ridiculous. Okay, we're gonna go back. Hey, it's still there. Wonderful. And now I'm gonna take a sip of water so I don't get as hoarse as I did last week. Okay, let's talk about more new comics. There are so many. So this is Aquaman, brand new, DC All In, so in continuity. New launch, easy to pick up. It's written by Jeremy Adams, who's been writing Green Lantern, with art from John Timms, colorist Rex Locus, who I'm not familiar with, and letters by Dave Sharp. Here's the thing about this. First of all, I don't like how he draws noses. I might have to actually zoom in on this for you. He draws noses with this little tiny stripe down the middle of the nose. I don't know. And then the whole even for a drag queen, that would be a really, really tiny nose. It makes everybody's face just like it's like looks like the center of a triangular kite. It really bugs me so much. But nose aside, this is fine. It just feels like so like we've seen this before. He's the king, but he doesn't like being the king. And he has the wrong powers because of absolute power. And then his family gets kidnapped because of course his family got kidnapped. It doesn't feel like Jeremy Adams brought any new ideas. And I feel like that's often the case with him on a lot of comics. Like he's fine. He's proficient. There's nothing wrong with the script. It's paced fine. I don't know if he brought any new ideas that made me excited about Aquaman. Archaic, I tried reading the first issue of this Ahoy Comic Books comic, and I could not make heads or tails of it. I couldn't tell you why it existed or what it was about, so we're not going to be reading number 2. Assassin's Apprentice number 3, this one looked really cool to me, but then I saw the 3 in the title, and also this, I was like, is this from a video game? And so I was like, I don't have time for that nonsense right now. That maybe later in the year when I'm caught up with everything, then I'll go deep on those, but I didn't read it. This is Astonishing X-Men, the Infinity comic. So it's another one of these Marvel Unlimited comics. This one has a creative team of Alex Paknadal writing, Philip Sevy on art, who I really like here, actually, a lot better than I have on other of these Unlimited books, and Michael Bartolo on colors, really good colors, actually, and VC's Clayton Cowles. This was the end of the first arc. These are about like 10-ish pages of physical comic each, even though you can't really tell because it's infinite scroll. So altogether, this is like a fat size, double sized comic. And it was an arc basically about Banshee looking into maybe Purifiers being back, but they're not what he thought they were. And also them kind of intervening in Paige Guthrie's life back on the farm in where they Kentucky or Tennessee, I always forget, and how those two stories intersect because of course he is her old headmaster. I actually really liked it. I liked it a lot better than a lot of the other stuff from the Ashes. I think the art was good. I think it made really good use of the vertical scroll. Like here you see, as you're scrolling down, you see Banshee get blasted, but then you read this Purifier talking about the blasting, and then you see Husk, and then Banshee's on the ground, but it's like all one continuous scroll. Really, really clever. I really enjoyed it, honestly. I think if you've got Marvel Unlimited, you should go and read it. I've not caught up all the way on the Avengers Academy Unlimited book because I love it so much. This one is like full comics. It is totally substantial. Each issue is like 80 scrolling images. So if you think that you could probably get 4 up panels on a page, it's about a 20-page book every month. So this is just a free, totally free comic book that you get on Marvel Unlimited every month by Anthony Oliveira. And it's so good. If you like a young team and you liked Avengers Academy back in 2010, it uses these characters so well. It's got blood. I didn't put the time wrong because I didn't read it, but then I'm going to talk about it for more than a minute anyway. It's got Bloodline. It's got Red Goblin. It's got the Captain America of the Railways. It's got New Kid Juggernaut. It's got Moon Girl. It's so great. It's like one of Marvel's best comics. And when I catch up, it will probably be in my top 10, but I have certain books that I just love too much and I refuse to speed through them, and this is one of those books right now. Barstow, I didn't really get the number 1, so I dropped it. I used to give Indie Series 3 issues to really grab me, but you know what? Life keeps growing shorter. I'm closer to death every day, and I also am closer to being broke every day, so I can't read every comic. But the pitch is that there's something weird going on in this very small town in the desert, and an FBI agent has to go and check it out because her partner or some other FBI agent has disappeared. There's like a supernatural murdery thing, and there's also like a desert near Vegas is so weird thing, kind of Fear and Loathing, which is one of my favorite books, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But I read the first issue and I just didn't get the point. Like I didn't know who the FBI agent was. I wasn't rooting for anybody. I really need to like care about where the story is going, and I need to be rooting for a character. And if you end the first issue and it's like, okay, somebody died and that's it. Like, why would I keep reading? So that one didn't clear the bar for me. Okay. Batman and Robin. By, let's see the credits. Philip Kennedy Johnson, writer, Javi Fernandez, artist, Carmine Di Domenico doing flashback art, Marcelo Mayo, colorist, and Steve Wand, letters. Philip K. Johnson, I have a mildly like-hate relationship with this gentleman. This was closer to hate. I think the plot is good. Again, I think a lot of writers right now are playing in this kind of year 3 space for Batman, where it's like not the very beginning, but it's early adventures, because it's a place you could really stuff some adventures in there. And he's using one flashback there to give us a modern villain. But here's the thing. This book, because it's Batman and Robin, needs to have good Damian. And I don't think Philip Kennedy Johnson understands Damian. Damian does get sad about things. He does get angry at Batman, but he is self-motivated. And there was this moment earlier in the arc where this little girl gets hurt, and it's kind of because he dropped the ball a little bit. And he's like, he like hates Batman now, and he's doing community service all because this one little girl got hurt. And it just, even with all the developments Damian has had in the past couple of years, it doesn't track to who his character is. Also, this time's up, so this extracurricular. Philip Kennedy Johnson, do this challenge in 2025. Write a comic book that is not all about how a woman got hurt, beaten, or sexually assaulted. Could you do that? This is my own stream, so I can go off. I don't have to be polite because I'm not an Omar stream where Marvel is a restraining order. Philip K. Johnson is like a sexual assault enthusiast. If you're a male writer and all of your books have women being sexually assaulted as a main plot point, you need therapy, not comic book writing. So I'm sure he's a great guy. He seems really cool. He's written some really good comic books, but that to me is terrifying. If you and who knows, maybe he's not cis. Maybe he is non-binary. Who knows? He could be a trans man. I have no idea. Maybe he has personal experience in his life with sexual assault as a male-bodied person. I'm not judging any of that, but I think it's weird if I pick up a comic by a certain author and I know it's going to have rape in it. I just think that's strange, okay? Especially if it's always to young women. Creepy. Okay. Gee, since I've really gone off, why don't I see what's going on in the chat? Oh my gosh, there's got to be a way to like bookmark the chat because I really lose. You want to hear me talk longer about some titles? Well, I'm allowed to go long if I want to go. Nobody can stop me from going on long. iPad has helped you love digital. I have this huge screen right next to me that I'm reading all this stuff on that's like this big. I would read all digital on that screen if I could, but it's not comfortable. Aquaman #1, James said good issue, had a lot of setup. Right, it kind of felt like the whole thing was status quo, but then the status quo was the status quo we already know about Aquaman. It's not like JSA, which like needed status quo and skipped it. It was status quo about that was like, okay, everything's exactly the same, and now the story will start next issue. Also, if you haven't read Kelly Sue DeConnick's Aquaman, seems like this is thematically going to be really similar, and that run was amazing, had amazing art, amazing colors. You should read it if you want to. You might like it. I'm trying to explain why people might not like it and why they might like it. Maybe I didn't do as good of a job explaining why you might like it. Liked Tim Arts, but his faces look horrible. Yeah, those little noses. Most modern stuff gives nothing extra when you read it on paper, comparing with 80s and 90s stuff. Yeah, because it's colored for digital. It's not colored for texture. And sometimes you read it on the page and it kind of just feels like it's going to like slide right off like an oil slick. That looks so weird. Seems like the colorist is doing all the work on that nose. Logan Wayne, that is one of my big pet peeves when colorists when modern artists in the digital era just draw a little hint of the nose. Like they just put like the little bridge of the nose and then they rely on the colorist to build the whole nose. I'm like, well, you don't know which colorist you're going to get. Some of them are better at that stuff than others. Ryan loves Jeremy Adams. Well, we're going to come back to that because when we talk about Green Lantern next week, I want to hear more from you about that. I think he's a really good like technical writer. His pacing is good. His scripting is good. I feel like his stories don't ever feel like significant enough to me. Based on Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings novels. Oh, you mean that Assassin's Apprentice #3 that I skipped. PKG is one of your favorite writers after his Warworld saga, but since then he hasn't been any good. Yeah, Warworld is his masterpiece. Mark Miller will come up several times in the stream, and you will note that I will not have read any of those comics because I have had enough. All right, let me see. And Tim's little noses always bothered me too, as far back as his work on Harley Quinn. Here's the thing, James, about if PKG is wildly pro-military industrial complex. I try not to get invested about what the authors feel in their personal lives. I truly try not to care. And if the books come off as pro-military, if that makes sense in the scope of that character, then fine. Like if Amanda Waller comes out pro-military, then you're doing your job. Or if there's a book where Aquaman like has to align with the military, I'm not going to get up in arms just because like Aquaman has a pro-military arc. Like, okay, great. Maybe that works for that story. So you can have all sorts of personal opinions, but once it starts bleeding into every single comic, like if every single PKG comic starts being pro-military industrial complex, then I'm like, okay, you're taking out your personal feelings on me as a comic reader. Okay, let's get back to the comics. This is Batman Dark Patterns, another one of these kind of year 3-ish stories by Dan Watters, Hayden Sherman, who's also drawing Absolute Wonder Woman at the same time. How? What is that sorcery? Triona Farrell on colors, who I really love, and Frank Setkovic on letters, who I follow on social media. This book is a must read. You must read it. Everybody now, write down, if you like Batman, write down, I will read Batman Dark Patterns. It is so cool, so stylish, so creepy. The thing you need to know about me, my toxic trait, is that I need Batman to solve something, and I need it to be tricky. If he's not solving something, and if he's not having a hard time, you're going to hear me say this probably 52 times this year, because there's a Batman book every single week, and I always say it, then I'm in. This book is, so he fights, there's this like medieval concept of the wound man, of like how many different places could you wound somebody where they still could function and not die. And so basically that's what this guy is. He's the wound man. And so Batman is like, how do I fight him? If I punch him at all of these nails and things are going to go deeper in and like puncture an artery or heart or whatever. So he can't fight him. It's, I love it so much. It just like totally tickles me. It just really, really works. And I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. Zoom to fit. Okay. I wonder, could I make this bigger? Like if I made it smaller, would it get bigger? Oh, look at that. Okay. So now I need to make the timer smaller. That's fine. We could have the timer be smaller, except for you have to be able to see it. Okay. So as a reminder, I'm going through all of the new comics this week. I'm Krisis with K, if you've just arrived recently. And I'm going through every comic that came out this week. And we're going to see if we like this as a live stream. We might like doing other things. I might not do this all this year. But for now, that's what we're doing. Okay. Oh, look, I did another image because you know why? This has Batman on a suburban street. And it was so weird to see Batman like walking down a suburban street in Ohio. It's like when Spider-Man goes past Queens further out into the suburbs and there's nothing to swing from. It was just really struck me as like, what a weird image to see Batman walking down this suburban street. Loved it. I didn't read the Blood Brothers Mother from Brian Azzarello and Edward Rizzo. I don't understand how to read Distillery. Like, where is it? Do they have a website? Or is it physical? I literally have no idea. I haven't really read anything but Marvel for like 2.5 years, so I missed some developments. Carlyle School for Kings. All right, let's get started. So Carlyle School for Kings is a Dark Horse comic. This is issue number 3. It is written by Nelson Greaves with art by David Castelluccio and colors by Francesca Vivaldi with letters from Frank Sokovic again. And I think I said his name right this time. I almost like this book. Almost enough that I stuck around for 3 issues. It's very kids go to a private school and get bullied there, if you're like that kind of book. But the concept is that all of the kids of all genders of the kingdom go to this away school where they are in a contest to be kings. And the new king is whoever wins the points at the school in that session of school. I guess it only happens when an old kid gets older. I don't really know. And that concept is cool. The storytelling, it's really, really focused just on the physical feats, which I get read better on the page, but we keep hearing that there's intellectual feats too, and it's not showing us as much. Also, it seems to be confused about how old the characters are. Like, are they 14? Are they 19? We saw them naked in the shower, so I'm going to assume 19. But it's a really cool concept and a really well-developed main character, and I really like the art, but I just feel like it needed maybe more than a limited series. Maybe that's what's holding it back. But I do like it. And I think if you like that kind of a book, if you like the kids go away to the away school and get bullied but have to come out on top type thing, like the book that shall not be named, I think that it's actually a really good example of that. I just think the plot could be a little bit tighter. This book, okay. So this is Christmas 365, which is by Mikey Way from, I believe, My Chemical Romance, and Jonathan Rivera with art from Piotr Kowalski and colors from Brad Simpson, letters from Joshua Reed. This Mikey Way is weird, and sometimes his comics do not hit for me. I kind of weirdly like this, but I do have one problem with it. So it's about this guy. He's working hard. He's trying to provide for his family, and he falls through at Christmas and kind of ruins Christmas. That was issue number 1. So he swears at the end of issue number 1 that he's going to make all Christmas every day, all year round. So basically, he goes hard out for every holiday like it's Christmas. So that's like really grounded. But then there's this very cartoonish aspect too. Like here he does a Cupid for Valentine's Day and it, like the arrow shoots him in the butt. That's not that cartoonish, but it kind of goes to almost like a Bugs Bunny place at points where like the cartoon violence he's enduring is like really silly. And I can't tell if it's supposed to be a book that's like cartoonishly silly, or is it about this guy going into psychosis about like needing to do Christmas all year. Also, there's maybe like a supernatural element that's like teased ever so slightly, but it's just really kind of like a madcap book that's very regular life right now about this guy who's determined to celebrate all year. So what does it look like if you go as hard for every holiday for Christmas? If you decorate that hard, if you make it an occasion that hard, if there's a Christmas wonderland with a Santa in some people's lawns, usually for Christmas, what does that look like for Arbor Day? And so it's a really clever concept, and it hooked me enough. I'm going to do a couple more, then I will look at the chat. Copra. I haven't caught up with this because I am obsessed with this book, and I read it in little installments because I just linger on everything so long. It's this indie superhero book by Michael Fife that he started in 2012, self-publishing. Image has published it at points, but he still self-publishes it and sometimes just does an arc at Image. And this is the beginning of the final arc, supposedly, Death of Copra. So he's self-publishing it, and then it's also being published by Image with different covers, which is really cool. There are trade paperbacks that collect all of Copra, and I started reading the first one digitally, and I'm like, I might want this physically. And then he did a hardcover, and I found on his website, he said he's going to do more hardcovers, but after Death of Copra. So I might buy the hardcover because I just love that. It's truly indie. It's like pen and ink, scratchy paper, your friend drawing a cartoon next to you in high school on their math notebook, but then they kept drawing for like a decade, and now they have their own superhero comic. That kind of indie, like a real indie. So if you don't like rough, scratchy, weird stuff, it's not going to work for you. And there's so many characters and there's so much continuity. You've got to read it from the beginning. This is not a jump in. I've tried in the past to jump in, didn't make a lick of sense. Then I went back to the beginning. Then I liked it. Okay. 2 more, and then we're going to go back to chat. And I keep scrolling the chat too far down and then missing your questions. Okay. This is called Cruel Kingdom. I had no idea what this was. All I saw was a robot with a sword, and then it was an EC comic. I'm like, I'm in. I'm easy. So what it is it is an anthology book of stories set in a fantastical world with a twist. This one has stories by Greg Pak, Al Ewing, Chris Condon, and Ben Winters. Some of them are really great, but there's this real divide in this book where some of the stories are original stories. The Ewing and the Pak stories are original, and they were amazing. The Al Ewing story might be my favorite thing I've ever read from Al Ewing. But then the other 2 stories are kind of like riffs on Disney, and I just feel like that's been done a lot. It's very Mark Russell, and I don't even think they even pushed it far enough. So one of them is like, what if one of the 7 doors was an incel? Okay. And the other one is, what if the Sword of the Stone, what if the wrong person pulled out the sword from the stone? Okay. The Pack story is about what if everybody had robots do their fighting for them? Very prescient. But the Ewing story, oh my God, I only have 6 seconds. It's the Hobbit. But what if the Hobbit had space travelers who came to the Shire and were like, we're going to fix everything. Don't worry about it. I think if you love Al Ewing, I can say you need to just buy this digitally and just read this one story. I want a whole series of this story. Let it be a pilot, Al Ewing. Maybe this is the vacation that you need from Venom, which has been so boring, because this is maybe my favorite Al Ewing thing I've ever read. So cool. Daredevil Unleashed Hell is a red band book, which means it's not coming out digitally, but they have solicited the trade for later this year. So I guess I'm just going to read it when it comes out in trade. I have offered to pay somebody in New Zealand money to sit on their doorstep to just read their red band comics. I don't want them in my house. I'm not paying $12, but I will chip in like $2 to read it and then hand it back to them so I do not have to keep track of it. I also didn't read DC versus Vampires World War V number 6, although I did update my DC Elseworlds guide to reflect all of World War V up until this point. I don't care. And then here's the actual Death of Copra that's coming from Image, different cover. Okay, I'll talk about this very weird comment and then I'll get back to the comments. I don't even know where to begin with this comic, Deliver Us from Evil. I did save the credits, but it's too small. No credits. It's, first of all, the cover has nothing to do with the art on the insides. The art on the insides is some of the most amazing indie art that I have seen. It's so detailed. It's got like a John Paul Leon aspect to it a little bit. I think I maybe even have another page because I was so blown away by the likenesses. I almost had to check, like, is this like AI? How is this tiny, tiny self-published book have art this good? But what is the plot? I couldn't tell you. It's about this person who's lived forever, maybe since biblical times. I can't tell. Weird biblical things are happening in the modern times and in the past, and maybe all at once because of Einstein's theory of relativity or something. There's biblically accurate angels. There's a nun who's a stripper who got her mouth sewn shut, and now she just appears like a portent. There's animals birthing goats with human heads. It's basically like all of that Revelation stuff, but I don't know if the plot makes sense. This person might not be a great plotter, but oh my gosh, is it worth it for the pages on the inside? If that kind of thing is worth it to you. That, by the way, you can subscribe to Global Comics, which is the website where you can just read all you can eat comics, Marvel and DC, but mostly indie. And if you have Global Comics, you can just read the new issues as they came out. So I was like, well, rather than like pay $4 individually, Global Comics is only like $7 a month. So I just signed up and read all 3 issues. It is strange. It is really strange. Okay, let's see what you've been chatting about. I'll take a little sip of water because that has to happen. Yeah, I like when Batman is a detective. And so any book where he's really detecting really tends to hit for me. James really liked Dark Patterns. Definitely a Long Halloween vibe. Hayden Sherman, his panel layouts are wild. Issue 1, I think the layouts are even wilder than issue 2. Dan Waters, we're going to talk about him, I think, again later. Maybe it's next week. But he really hooked me because he did that Lucifer for the Sandman universe relaunch in 2018, which I really loved and was so weird and transgressive. And so I really have like a love for him. But then sometimes when he doesn't deliver and the plots feel similar, I'm like, come on, man, I know you're weirder than this. Be a weirdo. There will absolutely be a trade paperback for Batman Dark Patterns, for sure. And it'll be great. It's so great. How many year 3s will Batman have? I use year 3 to kind of comment on. So year 1 is like he's learning how to be Batman. So that's a certain kind of story. Year 0 is like before he was Batman when he was traveling the world. Year 2 tends to be like we're introducing the Rogues Gallery. And then year 3 stories, I kind of generically just say it means he exists. He knows Gordon. They have a relationship. There is a Rogue Gallery, but it's still early. Usually there's no Robin yet. So to me, that's not official canon. That's just me. That's how I distinguish 0, 1, 2, and 3. Started X Journey with my wonderful reading guide. Thank you so much, Elmer. I'm glad I could help you with it. And I'm really happy to be streaming again. Super Panda says I'm at work right now and can't watch, but I'm so happy to see the stream that I jump in and say hi and totally watching it off to Krisis in the chat. Super Panda, when you're rewatching, I'm so happy that you're rewatching. Hopefully we will be free of technical difficulties and this will be available to rewatch. Nobody said anything yet, so I think we're still going strong. Stuart says, agree on the insert politics. I don't agree with sentiment. After reading Alan Moore, the idea of superheroes is pretty fascist at its core, and I think the majority of comic writers are not. That's really interesting. Like, everybody, of course, is bringing a little bit of their own perspective to a book, and I don't ever not want that. But I think, and it's not even politics. You can even have your characters be political and insert politics into the book. I don't dispute that at all. I just think if you have one trope that is in every single one of your stories, it's like, okay, like, yeah, especially if I'm somebody who's reading a lot of comics, it starts to be like, okay, well, do you do anything other than that ever? I think, and that's why I think a lot of people like when they read one book by these certain modern authors who are very tropey in that way. But I'm like, okay, well, as somebody who read 20 of their books, I can't take it anymore. But I appreciate while you, someone who only has read one book, are really into it. Hail, Lance J. McNair Comics. Anyway, we could get them and enjoy. Exactly. Anyway, digital, physical, projected on your ceiling. I'm into all of it. I almost liked one. Well, Felix, there are some good comics. So you know me, there's bell curve. There was one point this week when I looked at my averages. I have this very fancy spreadsheet that keeps track of all my reading. I want to make it available to all of you. Max is piloting it for me because there's so many formulas and calculations that I have to really make sure it works before I like give it to everybody. But it's crazy. But you could almost get the same thing just using League, honestly. But if you're a spreadsheet person like me, I use spreadsheets. And there was one point this year that my rating average for the year was exactly 3.0. And I love a bell curve. So that means I hated just as much as I liked it. I was like, we got to quit here. I read about a couple hundred comics so far this year. We've got to just quit while we're ahead. But no, then I messed it up. Usually my average rating is somewhere around like 2.9. So right around the middle, a little bit more weighted towards the average and the bad. Format today's great. Thank you so much, John Pauls. I really went back. I rewatched the one from last week that I hid. And I really, really tried to think of ways to make it better. Oh, okay. Mikey Way is the brother. Gerard Way. But are they both in My Chemical Romance? I don't know. I kind of missed that emo pop punk phase. Because I was busy being in a band. So I have actually every My Chemical Romance song, but I could not really sing a single one to me. Thumbs up from somebody about something. Copra seems like a book for Psycho Cleveland, perhaps. Wow, Circuit 32. Ian, so great to see you. Thank you for dropping by. I'm back on my Spawn bullshit, Ian. So we've got to talk sometime soon. Lance, EC Comics is one of those things. If I had unlimited space, money, and time, I would buy every single EC archives. But I like the idea that they're doing new EC Comics in that vibe, but with today's creators. That just really appeals to me. I like classic comics. I mean, given my druthers, I would just sit and read comics from the 70s full time. Like I love modern comics, but I love classic comics. Copra Arts is better than anything in big two superhero comics right now. It's also pronounced Michel Pfeiffer. Unusual, I know. Is it really? Are you messing with me? That is Michel Pfeiffer? Because it looks like it's just Michael. But if that's real, I want to respect people's names. Yeah, Copra is just... It's Suicide Squad drawn in your friend's notebook at the back of class, but then that has gone on for 12 years. It's so weird. You have to like weird. Like it's not polished. It's not polished like a mainstream comic, but I love Copra. Love, love, love it. Enough that I'm going to let it into the canon. Like I'm looking for a physical collection of it. That's when you know that I'm obsessed. A lot of these books I'll say that I like it, but they're never going to make it onto the shelf. If there's a book I find weird and cool enough that you hear me talking about wanting to get it physically, that has passed the test. It's really easy for these new EC titles. They're keeping just 2 titles per month. Epitaphs from Abyss still has about half a year left to issue run. Well, I'm sure I will catch up with that in a coming month. Do you recommend the original Secret Wars? I love the original Secret Wars, but you do not. Well, here's the thing. People bag on Secret Wars all the time, but Jim Shooter actually put Magneto through a very important arc in Secret Wars, and it tracks well to Claremont's arc. Whether or not Claremont wanted that to happen or not is another story. But I think if you're into Magneto's kind of hero turn, Secret Wars is kind of important to that. It's one of the main 3 plots, I would say, of Secret Wars. That and Colossus keep cheating on Kitty. But you don't have to read it. No X-Men comic really strongly is like, remember what happened in all 12 of those issues of Secret Wars until we get to like the Secret Wars 2 times. But even still, you don't have to have read it. But I personally really love Secret Wars. Global comic suggestion. Digital is the only way. Yeah, same. I could not do the reading that I do if I was buying physical comics. Even just buying them in American dollars on Comixology is cheaper than they would be physical here. I would not physically be able to do it. Global comics is cool. One of my friends in D&D, I have an ongoing D&D campaign, and one of them this week was like, Krisis, why are you not using global comics for all this stuff? And then I got on it. It was great. Bunk Master B is that a basketball game with family, but wanted to pop in and say, I can't wait to hear from surely one of the most beautiful weekly comic overviews on the internet. Hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. All right. Ryan, everybody loves the spreadsheets. Jean-Remy Argueta only can pop in during 15 minutes of break. I really appreciate all these people saying they're popping in briefly just to show support. That matters so much to me. Like, I know I'm supposed to say like and subscribe, but I'm just happy to be doing this again, to be on camera again, to be getting to talk about new comics again. And it means so much that so many of you like made 5 minutes in your day to just like get in here. All right. Felix says Mikey and Gerard are both in MCR. We're all allowed to be wrong sometimes, as is my love for Spawn is right. How dare you imply? Ian and I love talking about classic 90s Image. Ryan averaged 8.7 comics per day with the same spreadsheet. I'm currently averaging about 20 per day, which is not going to keep up, but I need to read that many the first couple months of the year so I get caught up to all the back end reading, and then I'll be able to like ease back. But if I try to do this every week, my pull list is going to be about 40 to 50 books a week. Oh my goodness. There are no good DeFalco's not a name that sells a lot of collected editions. There's a Thunderstrike classic, but it only has like the first 6 or 8 issues. But I love DeFalco. Friends is actually a friend of the family of mine. I've never met him, but people in my family know him. And I love Tom DeFalco Thor. Tom DeFalco Thor is one of my favorite periods of Thor. Okay, we're going to get back to the books because, oh my gosh, we're only at like D. I think that was letter D. We have so much left to do. I don't read Geiger. Jeff John's one of those authors. I will give him a chance. And I gave Geiger a chance. It's not for me. It's about basically what if Daredevil was Hulk in a post-apocalyptic world. It's this guy, his family died. We're in the post-apocalypse. He's irradiated, but he's also sad. But he's also, I guess, sort of disabled by his radiation. And he wanders around. It's just not a book for me. Oh, sorry. Haven't hid the current comic. Gotham City Sirens Uncovered is just all of the covers from that run of Gotham City Sirens. It is not a narrative comic book. Green Hornet and Miss Fury. I don't know. So this is by Alex Segura and Henry Barges on writing. Art by Federico Ceresa. Colors by Leslie Atlansky. And letters by Taylor Esposito. Let's start with the good. Amazing art. Very Greg Smallwood. Absolutely love it. You know I'm a sucker for pinks and purples in the coloring. Just big fan of the art. Huge fan of the art. Totally into it. Do I think it's a great comic book? No, I think, again, so this is the first issue, but with established characters. And I think but we're new to it. Green Hornet apparently is very prickly, very opinionated, not like a nice guy necessarily. I didn't get a reason to read more of Green Hornet. He was just kind of an ass this whole time. And he's not even really good at being a hero. So I'm like, he's an ass. He's not going to be a hero. And an indie book, if I'm rooting for the hero to die at the end of the first issue, you have not hooked me to buy more of that comic book. So that's what happened here. At the end of the issue, I was like, okay, he's trapped. Hopefully they shoot him. So I don't think I'm going to keep reading. I don't know if that's just the character. Alex Segura is very up and down for me. I've read some things by Alex Segura I really like. I've read some things that I think have been really bad. I just don't think this is for me. But boy, is the art great. Grimm Fairy Tales. Yes, my friends, I am back on my Xenoscope BS. Oh, yes. Here's the thing about Grimm Fairy Tales. So this is by the Brain Trust there, which is Joe Brusca, Ralph Tedesco, and Dave Franchini. It's art by Babiscio Cortez, colors by George Cortez, and letters by Taylor Esposito. The reason I like this book is because it's the center book of a shared universe that has been going on forever. I think the original Grimm Fairy Tales Volume 1 started in like 2008, 2010. This one started in 2016. We're up to issue 91. It's got the same lead character month in and month out. There's some supporting miniseries, but it's just telling their story. And I like that. I'm a sucker for a shared universe and a long, coherent narrative. And to me, a book that's in a shared universe that maybe has like strung along 91 issues in a row, I like that better than the best possible comic with only 4 issues. That's just my brain. That's the trope that I personally enjoy. I wouldn't jump in here. It sounds like a lot of stuff started happening around issue 70 or 75, but I know this world well enough that I just picked up at like 88 and started reading. I don't think this is one of their better issues. I think if you start at the beginning of 2016, I don't know if it's on Global Comics or what. I just have been buying them this whole time, and they were on Comixology Unlimited for a long time. But I guess they never explained the book. It's a fairy tale world, but it's also Philadelphia suburbs. And so it's all these characters from a fairy tale world and all these fairy tale world things happening that are crossing over into our world. But then there's also like 4 parallel worlds layered with ours that are the different kinds of fantasy worlds. So there's like a Robin Hood. Next issue is going to apparently have an evil Thumbelina. There's a lot of things centered on Alice in Wonderland. And so it's kind of like the amassed open source public domain fantasy world trying to break through to our Earth. That's what Grimm Fairy Tales is mostly about. But also all female protagonists, which all Xenoscope books have. I didn't quite get to this Xenoscope book this week. It's only a 2-issue series, so I really want to read it. I mean, so if I have a trope that I'm a sucker for, it's angels and demons nonsense. If there's an angel and demon nonsense in your book, especially if they're working together, I'm there, baby. I'm in. So I'm going to read this. I just ran out of time this week. So it is on my pull list. I just didn't get to it. Jim Henson Presents. So this is just celebrating Jim Henson and all of his various creations. So it's a series of disconnected one-shot stories, although I think some of them are going to continue from the Jim Henson universe. I hated it so much. I love Jim Henson. I grew up with Jim Henson. There was a Fraggle story that was fine, but it was like, okay, so these are Fraggles. Like, it was just like, okay, a Fraggle joke. That was by Shannon Waters, who I do like, and Max Sarin, who I do like, who most of us know from Giant Days, who was cute. It was Fraggles. Then the backstory was Dark Crystal by Seanan McGuire and Count Tundra on art. And it was actually a pretty good Dark Crystal story. I kind of wanted it to just be its own Dark Crystal comic book. It had pretty cool art, I have to say. But the middle story was a Farscape story written by Jill Tu, and it had like a lot of sexual jokes and comments. And I don't want to come off as a prude. Yeah, I mean, we just saw me like a bunch of cheesecake type books. But if you have a book that's an anthology book with Jim Henson's name on the front and it's got Fraggles and Dark Crystal, makes me think I'm going to be able to hand it to my kid. I don't want a middle story about Farscape with jokes about paying off sexual favors. It just really like took me out of like. And again, I know I've made a couple comments about sex stuff. I'm okay. I like sexy comics. Put nudity in your comics. Have people have sex in your comics. I'm into it. But in a book that starts with a Fraggle Rock story, I always go back to, who is this for? Who are you marketing it to? I guess it's just adults who like Jim Henson. But the other 2 stories I would have handed my kid. So I just was very confused. Okay. Jupiter's Legacy, don't read because it's Mark Miller. Have a nice day. Okay. This is a really interesting series, Juvenile. It's entirely by Jesus Orellana, who gave me a shout out on Twitter for talking about his book on my blog. That's why I want to get to talking about more indie, because like it matters to indie creators. So he does everything. Writer, artist, letterer, designer. I love this book. Sometimes it stumbles ever so slightly in execution. It is about a world where there's a major chemical terrorist attack like 20 years ago. And because of it and the wars that follow, children are not living to the age of 18. And so anybody who has money and who cares about wanting their children to live puts them in an institution that is like really rough, and they get like force fed all this medication. It's kind of like the beginning of Return to Oz, almost scary stuff. But if they make it through all the institution and they get operated on, they'll live past the age of 18. So now we're from the perspective of kids in this really hard ass version of this institution, and they're finding out what happens if I don't take my medication. Are the adults telling the truth? I love that concept. I love this art. Oh my gosh, do I love the art. I think Jesus is just, they seem to be really in a hurry. Like things happen in this issue so fast. It's like the girl and the boy are arguing, but then the boy shows the girl's powers, and then she decides not to take medication, and then she starts to feel the effects, and it's all within like 8 hours. I'm like, sometimes I think we could have had the same comic with almost all the same panels with just a little bit more time lapse in between the scenes, and it would have worked just as well. Also, there was one in the first issue and in the second issue, there's one physical scene that I just could not figure out, no matter how many times I read it, that the physical tracking of the characters in space didn't make sense to me. That said, I do love this book. I love the concept. I love the art. I love the letters. I think this is a amazing auteur that I'm being introduced to. Maybe you know who they are already. Is it the best comic book? No, but it's really in my sweet spot of stuff that I love, and I really love the art. So I'm incredibly interested. Let me go in closer on the art before I move on, because I really want to convince a couple of you to check this out. I guess the thing is, the share never can be bigger than the width of the thing I'm sharing, I guess is the key. So he does these really thick lines, but then he does coloring sometimes not in lines because he's doing it all himself. So like he never lines her lips. Her lips are always just colored, and he does a little hint of line. I really like it. There's something almost like bubbly about it to me that really, really works. So I'm a big, big fan. And if that concept sounds cool to you, very kind of Children of Men, then you'll probably like it. I'm going to do 2 more, and then I'll check in on what y'all are doing in the comments. All right, comments rather. This is one that I will not be hurried. I started reading it. It's by Wes Craig with Wordy and Andwall, but Wes Craig's scripting and drawing. I read the first issue. I was like, this is amazing. I read the second issue. This is amazing. I'm on like issue 5. You cannot make me rush through this book. It's about this prince and princess whose whole family and kingdom are murdered, deposed, gone. So now they're just on their own. But the prince, who's younger, there's a prophecy that he's going to inherit this magic and change the world, which may or may not be even a real prophecy. But now they're just roughing it. So they've got to make friends with all the people that used to be their allies when they were the prince and princess, including these lizard people in the next village over. And it's just an adventure. It's one of those kind of like, you could give it to a kid, but it's just a really cool like mythic book that works really well that you could read as an adult too. Kind of like that book by, was it Chris Samney, like Jonna and the Unstoppable Monsters or something? But that book didn't feel like it had texture, like it felt just like a storybook. This for me works reading as an adult too. I'm only on issue 6. It's on issue 24. I will be catching up to it. It comes out every month. They don't even take hiatuses. I'm obsessed. It's going to be one of my favorite. If the quality stays up, it will be one of my favorite comics of every year that it came out. Okay. I wanted to get to Kill All Immortals. It was on my pull list, but it was issue 5 and I just didn't have time to get to it. And so I probably will read it for when issue 6 comes out. Okay. Living Hell. This may be, in fact, you saw my top 10. This is my number 2 series of this year so far. I love angels and demon stuff. The first issue of this book, I'll turn on the timer, but I'm telling you now I'm going over time. The first issue of this book, it's so great. It establishes there's this man in a bar. He's a bartender. He's serving drinks. And he's like, I wish I could mess with my patrons. I wish I could make that person do the thing that they've always wanted to do. I wish I could make that person confess the thing that they've always regretted. You come to realize this bartender, not just a bartender, all in the first page. You get all this material. Then, so you think like, oh, this is going to be supernatural. Then the second page, you see them go home and he's just washing dishes. His wife gets off the bus and walks down this long, slopey street. It's such a dull page, but it establishes, no, this devil lives in a casual world. But very quickly, his world is getting turned upside down. So he's being tasked with having to hunt down other devils, and he doesn't want to do it, but he's got to for the sake of his family, because he also has a half-mortal daughter. And so here he's like fighting some, I think they're called Oni demons that eat the dead and kind of give them bad visions and bad dreams. This is another all-by-one author kind of book. Oh, sorry, I lost my credits. This is all by Caitlin Yarsky with letters by Clayton Cowles. By Caitlin's doing script, art, colors, and cover. art is amazing. The story is amazing. I love it. And this went to some surprising places. And just the visual storytelling is so good. She's so talented. The pacing, the way the art leads you. This issue had like, I counted like 7 different scene setups. It's only like 28 pages. And every time we'd be in a scene setup, I'd be like, this is taking too long. This is going to get decompressed. We're going to spend all the time in the scene. But then it ended and they moved on. Like in a 28-page comic, you can do 7 scene setups and have them be 4 pages each and move us along. And I just felt like that skill is so underutilized and unheard of by a lot of the artists and Marvel and writers in Marvel and DC that just make one conversation take up a whole issue. I love that at points it felt decompressed, but at points it felt very compressed. I love the story. I love the artwork. I love the surprising things that we learn about his half-mortal family. It's absolutely great. If you like this kind of slightly cartoonish art style, and if you like heaven and hell stuff, I could not recommend this more strongly. I gave the first issue, I think, like a perfect 5. I just love it. I think it's a great book. I think it's one of those books that we need to be talking about. It's why I read everything. I looked at it, I'm like, am I really going to pull this? Do I really care? I'm so happy I did. It's an amazing comic book. Please read Living Hell by Caitlin Yarsky. It is incredible. Okay, now let's see what you all have been talking about, and then we'll do more books. Oh boy, you've been talking a lot. Okay, here we go. Colossus didn't cheat. Oh, we're still talking about Colossus. He didn't cheat on Kitty. He was on another world and not sure he'd ever return. They fell in love. When he returned, he immediately ended things with Kitty. And they were on a break, for all of you 90s friends. Bunkmaster B, we're just wishing him well. I got to get better at reading the comment before I click the comment. Classic comics have a calming effect for Almir. Everything flows nice. I do. Sometimes it's funny when I'm like trying to read old stuff and new stuff in the same go, maybe because I'm like getting ready for a near mint condition or so. So I read a new comic and I'm pretty fast. This is me galloping. I'm pretty fast reading a new comic. And then I go back and read a comic from the 70s. And I feel like there's this acting exercise you do if you do acting in an academic setting where you move through Jello. You try to make it like you're moving like you would move through Jello, and that's sometimes what it feels like to switch back and forth. We're still trying to pronounce Michael Fife's name. It's not Fife, it's Fife. Okay, heard, and I will try to remember. Pitamo likes Geiger. It's fine. I like Gary Frank a lot. It just didn't, there's only so many hours in the day. I like. Here's the thing. That Ghost Machine universe and the Unnamed, which is that particular leg of that universe, is apparently a shared universe, but not in the sense that all the characters are in the same place at the same time. But supposedly Redcoat, which is set in like the 1800s, is in the same universe as Geiger. So I will be interested to see if Johns eventually has them interact in some way, because I am a whore for shared universes. Oh, DeFalco Spider-Girl is a DeFalco comic that's collected, and it's being collected in Epic Collections right now. James Abel liked Geiger Volume 1, and so is enjoying the ongoing. Again, I think I think Johns takes such a pessimistic view of the world, and Johns writing a dude in post-apocalyptic landscape being pessimistic, it just doesn't tick any boxes for me. Cartoonish books about devils and angels and hell do tick my boxes. So if Geiger ticks your boxes, go and get ticked. Tick away. Tick. That's because I'm in New Zealand now. We say we tick boxes. You probably, if you're in America, say that you check boxes. Felix saying GF Johns must get the most confusing hate mail from GF Johns. It probably said Jeff. This is a me thing. I read all names phonetically, and so when I read the name Sean, S-E-A-N, I say scene. It's just how my brain works. But then we had a friend in college named Jeff, spelled Geoff, and he liked to be called Geoff, and we all call him Geoff. And he's probably my closest friend named Jeff. So I just say all Jeffs as Geoff, or Geoffrey if it's the full version. I'm so sorry, but that thing about me you cannot change. I will always say Geoff Johns. You cannot stop me. Spider-Girl DeValco Friends is most of its run. Kane met Alex Agor twice. Yeah, I've heard his prose novels are incredible. I read so little prose, but everybody I know who reads prose and who's read them loves them. So I am very tempted. I think you can tell, I think in his new question book for DC that his detective prose is probably off the hook great. Felix, from the way I describe Grimm fairy tales, it sounds like a TV show once upon a time was 1,000% more European. Yes, it's not like a BD though. It's not like a bande dessinée European comic. It's very American. It's Philly. It's very Philly, and their headquarters of Xenoscope is in the Philly suburbs. I kick myself all the time that I didn't try to get a job or do something for them when I was there. Hayden, no worries that you missed a bunch, because so far, no technical problems here, so I think we're going to keep going. Just to be clear, Max, it wasn't the Fraggles who were having sex. It was the middle story. The middle story had the sex in it. Yeah, Ryan, that's why I was excited to get back to the show and back to like a bigger pull list, because I pretty much was just reading Marvel for the past 2 years just to keep up with it, because I do Marvel solicits on Near Mint Condition. And it's not good. Like, Marvel is not good right now. They're in a slump. They're in a big slump. Maybe they're selling okay, and there is Ultimate, although I don't think Ultimate's as good as it's cracked up to be. But I think DC's kicking their butts, and I think Indie's great. And so this was me being like, okay, I remember that I love comics. Maybe I got to get back to reading more comics and loving more comics. Dragon Tales vibes. I'm not sure, because I don't know which one it was. Sorry. Sometimes we just don't know. If you make the images a PDF, they are a PDF, Larry, and then upload it to StreamYard. Okay. Well, I'm not going to upload it to StreamYard right now because I don't want to invite any disaster, but we're going to get better and better every year, or every week, and every year. And so I already have it as a PDF. Next week, we'll upload it to StreamYard. I think it might be bigger than the file limit because I don't have a pro account, which leads me to remind everybody, subscribe to Patreon. It's $1 to get access to all the X-Men guides that are not publicly available, like a Mr. Sinister guide, like an X-Men guide, like my new Red Hulk guide, like another X-Men guide that's going to be coming out this week. And then it's $2 to get access to all of the DC stuff. And part of that is because DC is just harder and it takes more time. But part of it is I'm not always as confident DC's as right, so I don't want to publish it out to the whole internet right away. I want to take some time and stew on it and make sure it's correct. But all that helps. Like this, Crushing Krisis costs a lot of money to run, and also it helps me pay for things like StreamYard. So I really appreciate it if you get on Patreon. I haven't decided what would be on a video tier. I think in this year there will be a $4 or $5 video tier that I might do like an AMA just for that or something, cribbing off of Omar. But I haven't decided yet, and I'm interested in your ideas. But to me, charging $4 or $5 would be a lot to just use my website. So I know there's got to be an audio video component if I do it for that much money, and we'll see when we get there. That's the thing, man. 2 hours of me talking, Max, with no one to interrupt me means I'm going to say so many weird, crazy, gifable, clippable things. And that is part of the charm of having me back on my own stream. Sazmerv says, have I read Junkyard Joe? Not pessimistic at all, though, dealing with the horrors of war. I'm not a big war comic person, but I'll try it next time there's a new issue. My thing is, it's really hard to get me to go back for things if there's not a reason. Like if it's not on a solicit show, I'm not making a guide and there's no new issue of it. You have to really twist my arm because I'm like, there's so much new stuff to constantly read and digest. So if a new issue of Junkyard Joe comes out, or if I have to cover it for my image post, then I'll read it. Hey now, Harvey Pickar's Ghost. Joe Cool. Thank you. It's nice to see you. Just a note, I do not prefer being called Pete. I'm not attacking you. You don't know. You're just being friendly, and it's a friendly kind of shortening of a name. It triggers things we don't need to get into on the stream right now. Maybe later this year when we all get to know each other better. So y'all can just call me Krisis. That's fine. That's how all the internet knows me. But Peter is my name, but let's cool it on the Pete. I don't want that to spill in the Near Mint Condition. It's not just like a preference. Haha, it actually does upset me. So again, Joe, I'm not upset with you. You're just making a comment. I just feel like this is my own stream, so I can actually unpack that a little bit. I truly dislike it, and it gives me bad feelings. So please, y'all, no Pete's. The only time it works is when I see somebody I grew up with that's from South Philly and they say Pete. It like rings right, but also that's part of why I don't like it. Double Z2423, surprised they haven't pushed out more Ultimate lines. Well, I think they're doing a smart thing that they should be doing on the X-Men line, which is taking it very easy and only launching a few books at a time. Harvey Pickers goes, missed the part where I talked about Copra. I love Copra. Xenoscope Robin Hood books was by Chuck Dixon for all of you Dixonites. Robin Hood tends to be one of the better books. I will say Grimm Fairy Tales is very up and down at Xenoscope. The books that tend to be really consistent in quality are Robin Hood and Van Helsing. So if you really just want to check out like what a decent Xenoscope book is, any Van Helsing miniseries you pick up is actually going to be pretty good. Okay, see, and James is right. Harvey did get the newest Copra. I love Copra. Okay, Joe Cool, again, I'm so sorry. I did not want to make you feel bad. It was just a chance to say, because it started coming up as a joke on Near Mint Condition. I like tried to shut it down, but everybody was like, haha, and I don't want to turn Near Mint Condition into like Krisis's therapy session. So here I can kind of let you all know, and then when you're all on Near Mint Condition, you could be like, oh, hey, they don't really like to be called Pete. Why do I always think there's just an X-Men stream? Well, because I put X-Men in the title for clickbait purposes, and my opening monologue was about X-Men. Okay, Okay, Krisis Rocks is a name. And with that, let's get back to the book, shall we? Y'all, we're only on L. Okay, Lucky Devils. This is a new team, a new book from Charles Soule, from an old team, Charles Soule and Ryan Brown, who did 8 Billion Genies together, and it's more heaven and hell stuff. That's the theme this week. I really thought it was pretty charming. I like Ryan Brown's art, but it's kind of like really square looking. I can't explain it. And so I think his weird little square devils are actually like perfect for Ryan Brown's art. It's about these two people that are fundamentally good people. And no matter what tempts them to try to be bad, they try to just be good. And these two devils can't move up in the devil world because these people are too good. So they come to the people and they're like, I'll make you a deal. If I stop giving you bad circumstances in life and stop trying to tempt you to be wrathful or enviable or envy others, will you just do all the things you can do to get power and influence over people? Because I get credit as long as you get influence. It's just that most people get influenced by being horrible. What an interesting idea that is, right? Can you just be a good person and get lots of influence? I win as a devil, you win as a person, and I'll stop torturing you. What a fun concept. I'm really, really into it. Okay. Finally, an X book. Folks, we have a winner on our hands. Magik #1 was one of the best X books I have read in From the Ashes. It's real damn good. It's a new writer, Ashley Allen. She's from DC's Milestone Initiative. She's only done a couple short stories, but she did write the Magik one-shot in Bloodhunt last year. And she nailed the voice. It's perfect. It's magic. And I love Germain Peralta's art all the time, full time, but the colors by Arthur Hesley here, oh baby, it is so good. So the idea is like, she's just magic, and she's really kind of reflecting on like, wow, it's great that I'm not the Dark Child. That was a messy part of my life, not being the Dark Child. And then she goes to this town to help out some people. And unfortunately, that helping people pulls out some Dark Child elements. And so now she's trying to help these people and also deal with the fact that maybe she hasn't put the Dark Child as far behind her as she thought. The colors are so good, and it's brutal without being gross and brutal or like over the top brutal. Like, kids die. If that's a trigger for you, don't read it. But like, they don't die in like super bloody red band ways. It's just like, everybody's at risk and Magik's going to get upset about it. And to me, that is the right amount of stakes for a Magik book, because clearly Magik is going to be motivated by kids in peril in a different way than Damian Wayne would be. I think this was a home run. It was almost perfect. There was one page of action where the action just happened so fast that I couldn't really find the continuity in the action. That's one of my big things that separates like an excellent comic book from a perfect comic book. When the things get quick, the art doesn't quite track easily from panel to panel, even if I can figure it out, but I've kind of like got to sit back and really think and stare. To me, that's like one of those little minor points off that takes a book from like a 5 to a 4.5. And that's where I am on this. I think it's great. I think if you're looking for an X-Men book to read, the solo books have all been stronger than the team books. Storm is amazing. Phoenix is really fun if you like Jean. Not the best book ever. I think Wolverine Strong will get to that. Magik might be even better than Storm. I'm really, really pulling for this new writer, Ashley Allen, to do well. And guess what? We're talking about Magik tomorrow in Your Mere Condition, doing a Map My Magik. So we'll tell you every story you've got to read to get ready to read this book if you want to jump in and you want to know more about Magik. Perfect timing. Okay. We didn't do that by mistake. I did not read this What If Mickey and Friends Became the Fantastic Four. So cute. I'm just not a Disney person, so it's not going to really do anything. Oh no. Okay, so this is Marvel Rivals. I just put them in the wrong order. So this is a book that's kind of set in the world of the game. It's written by Paul Allor. I really like them. I like their G.I. Joe, one of my favorite books of the past decade. Art by Luca Claretti, colors by D. Cunniff, letters by Joe Sabino. I liked this issue. There's another one of those Marvel Unlimited books. I really like this one better than the last one because it was a little bit more toyetic. Like, they felt more like action figures or video game characters, and they did video game stuff. And like, that's kind of what I want from this book. I'm like, I can't play the game because I have a Mac and I'm old and slow and have bad eyesight. So like, give me the experience of the fun of the game, but as a narrative comic book. And I think it did it this week. It's lightweight. I wouldn't tell anybody to like rush out and buy it if it costs $5, but it's free with Marvel Unlimited. So just read it. Okay. Next, oh, sorry, I'm going in the wrong direction. I really wanted to read this. Blood Moon is the same people who made that weird Deliver Us from Evil comic. And it seemed really cool, but it didn't seem to be digital anywhere that I could find. So maybe it'll pop up on Global Comics in the next couple of weeks. It's kind of a pity because if I miss reading something on the week of release and then I read it later, like I'm never going to get talked to. So I need to like make a remember file for things that didn't come out in digital and day and date that I could talk about later. Moon Man, I'm so torn on this book. I read the first couple of issues. It's by Kid Cudi, like the musical artist, co-written by Kyle Higgins. And I actually really like the writing. I could not get into the art. It was too, like, it was almost just like pencils that have been colored right over, but like loose pencils. I like pencils that have just been colored over. It's a style I really like, but it's like even the faces were too vague. So I dropped it at 2, but I keep thinking about it. It's this, we're trying to get back to the moon. These 4 astronauts who work for this mega Tesla-like corporation or SpaceX corporation go, and they lose 7 minutes. And nobody remembers, and so they bring them back when the 7 minutes, all video feed, everything dropped. And so and maybe they got powers, maybe something weird happened, maybe they were in contact with the universe, and it's starting to kind of unfurl the story of what happened in the 7 minutes. So I love that kind of concept. I love Event Horizon. I love those kinds of books. So I might go back and pick it back up. It just, the art wasn't hitting for me. Namor. This series is really interesting because every issue is double length. It's Jason Aaron, and he's writing the present day Namor with Paul Davidson and the past Namor with Alex Linz, colored really well by Niraj Menon with letters by Joe Caramagna. And I really hated the first couple of issues of this. Over time, I think I've been like Stockholm syndromed into enjoying it because I really, oh no, okay. I really just like, so the idea is that there's this war in the ocean and that Namor, the 7 tribes warring for who's going to be the new king of the ocean. They're like, F you, Namor, you've messed things up too many times. And I really like the idea that Namor at first wants to fight them all, and then he goes through a period of like, maybe just let them win. And now he comes back around to like, no, because they're all worse than each other. Like none of them are going to do anything good for the oceans of the world or for Atlantis. And as Aaron has been doing the flashbacky parts with Alex Linz, the flashbacks for me are getting stronger and stronger, and they're making me like the present day more, to the effect that I almost want to go back and reread it now that I've read more of the flashbacks. So I love a book that's like structured in a smart way like that, and this book is. Still not great. I don't even think it's the best Namor book, but I really appreciate that Aaron seems to have a very complete story, and he's going to tell it in 8 issues, which really is going to be like 16 issues because they're all double length. And I'm into that. Somebody with like a solid, distinct pitch for Namor that's 6 issues or 16 issues long. I'm into it. The last great Namor story was Zdarsky's Defenders in 2019, which was my book of the year that year. All right, moving on. Napalm Lullaby. I read this first issue from Rick Remender and Bengal. It's one of the worst things I've ever read. Nemesis Rogue Gallery by Mark Miller. New Champions. Oh, sweet dear Lord. Okay. I thought that these characters came out of nowhere. As it turns out, they briefly were in the end of Steve Fox's Spider-Woman run. I'm again going to, and this is by Steve Fox with art by Ivan Fiorelli and color art by Arthur Hesley with letters by Travis Lanham. I'm going to go back to the thing that I said earlier that Ryan Higgins from Comic Conspiracy said. Who is this book for? Look, I know sometimes we got to take a flyer on a new book. That's how we get new characters, right? If we said never give us anything new, we'd have no Unstoppable Wasp, we'd have no Wage Champions, we'd have no Spider-Boy, we'd have no Agent Venom, we'd have, like, that's how we get new things, right? But I do think your book needs a pitch that's like, who is this book for? Is it a new kids team that are like wannabe sidekicks but aren't sidekicks? Okay, so who are we selling this to? Are we selling it to Strange Academy fans? How are we going to pitch this book in such a way that Strange Academy fans would like it? Reading this book, the colors were good, the script was fine. I don't understand who it's for. If I worked at a comic shop and I'm kind of like working the comic shop counter talking to you all right now, I can't tell you which of you I would recommend this to because it's not for anybody. I guess if you like young heroes, they're young heroes. I guess if you like heroes who are new to being heroes, I guess if you like heroes who've taken on other people's costumes but have absolutely nothing to do with them, but it's just, it feels like if you gave us 1 or 2 characters to anchor this, who we had more of an emotional relationship with, I would be able to say, oh, well, it's this one character that you love. Like it's Moon Girl, but Moon Girl finds all these other heroes that really don't know how to be heroes. By the end of the issue, we kind of get that because Spider-Boy is in it, but Spider-Boy is so new by himself, and Spider-Boy's comic is like an all ages comic that I could give to my kid. This doesn't feel like an all ages comic. On the cover, it's rated teen. So I'm like, it feels like I would have known who it was for if it had been all ages, because then it would have been like, oh, Kid Krisis is obsessed with Strange Academy. I didn't really like it, but I can tell you who Strange Academy is for, right? It's a magical school. It's a boarding school comic. It's all these characters from all over the Marvel magic realms. It's got a little bit of Doctor Strange. It's got like coming of age stuff. Like, I know who to sell that to. I don't know who to sell this one to. And I don't think anybody's going to buy it. It's fine. I've always wanted to read Nexus. It's like one of those comics that was around when I was originally buying comics. It's originally by Mike Barron and Steve Rude, although now I think it's just written by Mike Barron and Steve Rude does not draw anymore. So this was a OGN that was released by Big Comics last year, but then they licensed it to Alien Books to do it in 2 issues. And I actually got them mixed up and I read the second issue before I read the first issue. He's kind of this, it's like a play on the Marvel universe. He's kind of like a Captain Marvel-y kind of character, but it's very silly and funny. And it's kind of focused on like all the goofy aliens he meets and how dysfunctional they are. Because I've read a little bit of old Nexus, but not enough. It's very lightweight. I mean, basically he's trapped between a Galactus and an Annihilation Wave. And he's trying to negotiate to make the Annihilation Wave not try to eat the Galactus, because if it does, then the Galactus is going to be hungrier. Really beautiful, clear artwork by Kelsey Shannon. Great, great colors. They're actually doing their own colors. Great letters by Warren Montgomery. Just a very readable, very fun comic. If you want Marvel spacey type of comic and just read an indie comic, there's just 2 issues. They're really well drawn. Highly recommended. Nexus is, I have this list in my spreadsheet of like the 100 comic runs I really want to go back and read. Given the time, I only get through like 1 a year, and I really want to go back and read Nexus from the start. I'll do a couple more and then I'll see your comments. Don't forget, like and subscribe. It does help people watch, but I'm glad that you're watching and I love interacting with you, but we're almost at the 2-hour mark and I cannot go past 2 hours because I will start losing my voice and I'm on 3 more streams this week. So we just got to keep moving, but I will see your comments in a moment. This is NYX from Marvel. This started out as my favorite X-Men book. I hate to say this out loud on a stream, but Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly, who I really like, they call themselves the Hive Mind. They're really good writers. They're good starters, but they're not good closers. They have great concepts. They write great issue 1s. They're even sometimes great at ending a first arc, but every book I've read from them really falls on its face when it gets past that initial concept. It did in Outsiders. It did in their Captain America. It did in their Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, I just want good things for them because they seem like cool dudes and I think they're good writers. They do great character voices. This whole concept of this issue is like, now we have this mutant conclave in New York. It's the only book that's really reacting to the memory of Krakoa, and Prodigy is kind of the de facto leader, but more like the advisor. So Sync comes and Sync is like, no, this is dumb. You're going to get people killed. Except for it doesn't feel like it tracks to who Sync was at all in Krakoa. And it just doesn't, like, why am I reading this? For what end am I reading Prodigy and Sync fighting? And also, I think they just got Sync's voice totally wrong. And then the Miss Marvel part was like so throwaway. It just, the first 3 issues of this book were exactly what I look for from X-Men comics. And every issue past that has just been boring. And I hate it because I think they're doing good work, but somebody's got to teach them how to close. No, coffee's for closers. And if they want some coffee, they need to learn how to close. Okay, this is the last one I'll do, and then I'll look at comments. So this was the one that I mentioned earlier is in my top 10. It was a Comixology original, which means if you have Comixology Unlimited or Amazon Prime, you can go read it for free right now on Amazon. I was like, oh, Comixology original released as a physical issue. Do I have to? It's amazing. It is a dark fairy tale, all in black, white, and red, about a man who is in love with the princess of a kingdom, but he's cursed to turn into this vampiric bird creature. A rook is a kind of a bird. And so he's trying to come to terms with the fact that he's going to have to stay away from her for the rest of his life. But also, what is he? Is he going to kill people and eat them? Is that who he's going to become? Why does he have this curse? Is it because of his family? What does his family do? It's so beautiful. It's so compelling. And it just feels like a dark fairy tale. Like, it just feels like some like lost Brothers Grimm story. It's beautiful lettering, beautiful artwork. I'm just totally into it. It's by this team who I think did Beg for Mercy together. Abigail Jill does the story and art. Abigail Jill Harding. And then Richard Starking of Comicraft does all the lettering. And it's just great. Masterful modern fantasy. 100% endorsed. I thought I was going to rush through it because I read it this morning, actually, right before the show. And I was like, I got to get the PDF for the show together. And then I just lingered just like a cranberry. I just was like, I'm going to get lost in this comic book. It was really, really good. If you like black and white art, if you like fantasy, fairy tales, but like fairy tales in the modern world. Oh, I should say it's like set in kind of the not steampunk, but like in the industrial age of London. And even though there's like this fantastical king and queen that are not the king and queen of London, it's kind of just set in London. So it's not like in a totally fantastical fairy tale place. Okay, let me catch up on your comments. Michael Fife is so good. Have I read Zegas? No, I clearly need to read more. Michelle Fife. Keep anti-clickbaiting me. Oh, thank you, Tull Perry, for loving my streams. I really appreciate that. Max, the sigh that came along with We're Only on L. Well, I had 47 comics in my pull this week, and I think I read 30 something of them. James Abel, mini review, Magik. What a great way to start a new series. Give me more of this type of Magik and horror. Best X-Men comic this week. Yeah, if the quality keeps up, this will be the best X-Men comic in the line, and it'll be going head-to-head with Storm, and then Storm and Magik could cross over because they originally had a mini series called Storm and Magik. How cool. Okay. Magik. Yes. Harvey Pickers Ghost says, I still up clicking anyway because it's a Crushing Krisis stream, and that's so kind. Harvey Pickers Ghost to me is like the perfect adage of like, I can totally disagree with you and I'm totally interested in your opinions. We don't often agree with things, although apparently we both like Michelle Fife. But because Harvey interrogates what he likes or dislikes about comics, it's still really interesting talking to Harvey about comics. Omnibus Ryan, yeah, Magik was so compelling. Seemed like the writer really understood the character in her past. I was so nervous because it's a new writer, and sometimes with new writers, they don't understand how to set up the scenes. They don't understand how to move from scene to scene. I was like, oh gosh, but no, she nailed it. And I love to see that. I want to root for new writers. Plus seeing Magik using her spellcasting abilities more and the justification why she doesn't as often. Yeah, it just really seemed like somebody had sat down and thought about like, what does Magik do off on her own? To the point that it made me think, oh, she's probably off doing these things on her own all the time. More people loved Magik. Mink 0029 is a person that's not reading the single character X-Men lines. What's going on with them plot-wise, just venturing off? Yeah, Magik, some of the books are people who are members on teams, like Wolverine's on Uncanny X-Men, Psylocke is on X-Men, Magik is on X-Men, but it's kind of just like them doing their own thing, and you don't have to read the other books. Like I do think to their credit, they each start by saying like, here's why this character is doing something on their own, and it really, really works. Lance loves the Magik character, will definitely read it. Kids die, we all got it coming, kid. Yeah, I like comics where everybody's at risk. I don't want it to be gratuitous. If every one of your books is about like killing kids, just like, did they shoot the dog, right? Like if every movie you make is a dog dying, like it's like, okay, why does the dog always have to die? But if it feels like everybody's at risk in your comic and maybe the kids are going to die, yeah, I'm totally into it. Is it sarcastic goth Magik I like, or is it boring Jakku? It's, she's a little snarky. I don't know if we're all the way back to totally sarcastic Magik, but she's not just like, I'm the captain, listen to me Magik. I think we're going to get there, James. Kid Cudi, I don't know, Felix, but I did see Kid Cudi or Cudi. It's part of his actual last name, so that would be the hint. Plus, I'm sure 1,000 people on the internet have said it. I saw him open for Lady Gaga in 2009. So I've seen Kid Cudi live. Oh, it's Cudi. Okay. Never rely on my pronunciation of anything. It's Sudi. New champions, James. I love that James has reacted to every one of these. Feel like it's an anime from the 2000s. I don't really care about any of the characters. Not sure if I'll read anymore. Maybe after the setup is done. And that's the thing. I think if they had sold it more as like, this is like a 90s anime Marvel book, but I just don't. It's hard to know who to tell to go and read it. Because again, it didn't feel all ages enough for it to be a new all ages book. Samantha, YouTube failed to tell me I was live. I'm so sorry, but you'll watch and reply later. There is rumors that Samantha and I and Beyond Comics are going to do an all Kiwi invasion of Omnidog's vault next month. So stay tuned in. It's not bad, Nick. I think for what New Champions was, it was executed very well. It's like, again, who's it for? If there's one thing that's been better since From the Ashes started, it's that Magik has been written smart, using real spells, no longer being relegated to comic relief and a cheerleader for Jean. Yeah, I do think that actually a lot of the little Magik sub-scenes in Jed McKay's X-Men have been pretty strong. James Abel on new MX7. Good, but not the best. Still 100% better than Sentinels and Wolverine. I don't agree with both of those statements, but one of them. Lanning and Kelly are the modern Abnett and Lanning. They are, but I think Abnett and Lanning are masters. I love them on their own. I love them together. I really love Lansing, Kelly, I would be heartbroken if they like saw a clip of this and they just saw me bagging them. They are I will buy anything, but I need them to get better at ending. It feels like they start so big, so imaginative, such good character voices, and they're always surprised that they only have a certain amount of run, which is funny because a lot of times they're on runs that like are defined already, and then it's like at the end like, and then it doesn't make sense because they did that. That's how the first arc of NYX ended. I'm just like, okay, y'all, like maybe plan for that. Maybe they are. Writing is hard. I'm not a comic book writer, you know. I had a very challenging weekend, as we heard at the top of the show, because I had an eye infection and I also poured a glass of milk into my laptop. But you know what? What do? We resolve, we repair, and we recover. Okay. Magik and Storm crossover, Omnibus Ryan, let's get it. Yeah, you know, Vincent, once you're off of X-Men, it's like, feels like it takes a lot of inertia to get back to X-Men. Okay, not comics, but as a Philly person, did you watch About Elementary? I'm like 2 years behind in Abbott Elementary. As established in Crisis lore, I spend too much time reading comics to have time to watch television. Okay. Peter DeBruyne, yes, if you're a New Mutants fan and if you like Magik, I think this series will be very, very satisfying. All right, y'all, I'm just about caught up to present, and we have so much more books to do, so we're going back to the books. Also, I always love your feedback. Like I go through every single comment you write after the show. I truly do. So even if I didn't get to read it on screen, which I'm really, really trying to get as many of them as I can, I know that they all matter to me. And the fact that you want to spend time with me, like I wish I lived in the United States and I could see you all at conventions and say hi to you, but this is just the way of the world. And I'm in New Zealand. And I just love that there's a community. Like I have people I look forward to seeing. However PCars go show up, I'm like, Harvey, you know? I love that. You are my community. And maybe we'll do more community stuff this year. I definitely want to play games, but I think I need a few weeks to just like get this format working. Okay. This was another one that now that I'm a subscriber of Global Comics, I wanted Global Comics, and there it was. So I read it. Look at that. If you like indie books, I think it's $7 a month to read as many indie books that these little publishers put out. So this is written by Christopher Rita, art by Alonso Molina Gonzalez, colors by Paulo Rivas, and letters by Travis Lanham. Y'all, the art in this book was amazing. The art really gripped me right from the beginning. Really bold colors, really strong line work, but like it's got a little bit of that like kind of Ryan Ottley quality to it, where like the people have a little bit of gawkiness to them, but they've got like a nice thick line on them. I love how this, so he's getting stomped on his head, then he comes out of the door and we see these two people from the back, then the two people are chasing him, then we turn the camera, which doesn't always work. You're not supposed to always violate the 180 rule, but then he shoots through a window and you know he's going to jump through it. I think that is a really good flip of the 180 because we know exactly what's happening because we can see them behind him and we see him running towards the camera, towards us, and he's shooting through the camera, which is the window. Very cool. That was in a minute. I'm going to keep going. It's this guy who's an assassin. He does an assassination that maybe he regrets a little bit for reasons. And then we fast forward a few years and it's time for the first post-Earth spaceships to leave Earth. And so he's decided he's going to leave Earth. And I don't know quite where it's going. We're going to see where we head later. But I like it. I like the art. I think the writing's good. You know what? This book had sex in it, and it didn't bother me because it was sex that was used well in comic books. See, folks, not a prude. Sex is okay. Let's have it. Okay, moving on. Mark Miller wrote this book called Prodigy. Good for him. Next week, I should have read this week. So it's Radiant Black, the story so far, recapping the first 30 issues of Radiant Black. And I read a lot of people's comments online that were like, whoa, this did a great job at recapping where it is. And as somebody who isn't necessarily interested in the first arc of Radiant Black, I read it and I was like, but I'm interested in where it is now. This is perfect. I don't have to read everything from the start. So I probably want to do that. Red Sonja, I've been meaning to catch up on this series because it's by friend of Near Mint Condition, Tyrone Grumbach, who I really enjoy. Spoilers for next week. I'm obsessed with her on Catwoman. She's the best Catwoman writer we've had in 13 years. But so I was like, you know what? This is going to be my week. And I'm going to jump right in. I'm not even going to like torture myself trying to read all the way up to issue 17. Wouldn't you know, issue 17 is the second to last issue. Good job, Krisis. But anyway, I read it. It's really good. Tyrone Grumbach, great voice for Sonja. Love Walter Giovanni's art. Great colors. I mean, she's fighting Kulan Goth. She's kind of in the afterlife, so she's like experiencing the afterlife, but also fighting him so he doesn't come out to the real world. I was a little bit lost, but let's be fair. It's the penultimate issue. I should be lost for picking it up here. I am going to go back and read it. It was good. I wish I had been reading it this whole time. I think Tyrone Grumbach works better in, I don't know if she's great for the Marvel Universe, and I've liked a lot of her Marvel books. She's amazing for a sword and sorcery universe. And I'm not the hugest Red Sonja fan, but I will try every Red Sonja book because sometimes they hit for me and sometimes they don't. All right. Oh, Sentinels. I hate this comic so much. Flames on the side of my face, heaving breaths, heaving. I hate this book, and I tried to keep an open mind, y'all. There can be an interesting story about Sentinels and people as Sentinels. Here's the problem. Everybody's saying how much they like it, and it's the X-Men book that they like. Maybe it's because with brand new characters who have no voice, you don't realize how bad the writing is. Or maybe you like it. You can like it. I'm not coming for you if you like it. But these characters, they're all voiced the same. They have no personalities. We've not been given any reason to like any of them, except for the one guy as a kid whose mom is into the mob for money. There's no reason. No, Alex Peckinpah has done no work to establish why we should care for them. And then they're all like humans as Sentinels. Okay, why do I want to read that comic when I could be reading a mutant comic? Like, so they signed up for a bad deal. Yeah, we know that. Maybe try not hating mutants. Then this tries to establish relevancy by being like, oh, we're going to tie it into this other character who died 14 years ago, but it was a cool character who I agree that he's cool, and that's why you should care. You know what? Screw you. This is taking the spot of a book that could be about characters we love, that could be well written, and that could have good art and colors, and it doesn't have any of those things. And if you like it, I am so happy you like it, and I'm happy you're reading comics you enjoy. To me, this is one of the worst books put out by any publisher. So we're a little bit apart on that particular opinion. Okay. The Serpent in the Garden. I have not read all of Hellboy. I own all of Hellboy. That's a problem for another time. But I will always read a new Hellboy comics. I know enough Hellboy that I can usually follow along. And sometimes they hit for me, sometimes they don't. I'm obsessed with this. If you just know Hellboy from the movies, you could read this. You don't need to know all of Hellboy. It's so cool. It looks so good. But the whole thing of it is that it's like all of Hellboy happened. We're in post Hellboy. Whether, I don't know if that's where we are in actual Hellboy continuity, I don't know. And it's taking this one creature who Hellboy did canonically fight early in Hellboy, and he's existing in the post Hellboy world, and he's been tasked with going into Avalon and defeating Avalon for Morgan Le Fay. And it's like a storybook. It's like a fairy tale, but it's a fairy tale that treats Hellboy canon as its own fairy tale in this fairy tale world. The art from Ben Stenback is beautiful, evocative of Mignola without imitating Mignola. Amazing colors by Dave Stewart, but you already knew that because it's Dave Stewart. Letters from Clem Robbins, really easy to read, really like sitting on the page really well. I just love it. I love it. So you're discovering in the stream, fairy tale is one of those tropes I really, really like. And it's an easy mark if you do fairy tale well. So there you go. I think we're almost done. I didn't get to read this one, Shadowman Soul Eaters. It is on my pull book, or my pull list. I'm a little confused because a lot of the marketing material says it's a resurgence of the Valiant universe, and it's like you can jump in here. So did they erase everything from 2012 to present? Because I liked that Valiant universe. If you know, comment, and I'll see it in a couple of books. So if that's the case, I might be too bummed out to start from scratch because I really like the Valiant universe. But if they're just saying it's an easy jumping on place and we've like Krisis'd it a little bit, not me, Krisis with the C, like DC Krisis, then I'd be into it. Okay, Snot Girl, I don't read. It's by Brian Lee O'Malley, who is Scott Pilgrim's creator. It's like, what if we did Scott Pilgrim, but it's about like a social media fashion influencer who has a lot of mucus. I read the first couple of issues because I bought the first trade. It's like a little bit too low slice of life for me. I don't know, it's just not my thing. But I think if you're a Scott Pilgrim fan, you should give it a chance. I love Star Trek. I have all the Star Trek movie Blu-rays downstairs. Of course, I never have time to watch them. I've never read a Star Trek comic. Part of me is like, would it matter to me if I read a Star Trek comic? Like, it's so rooted in watching, unlike Star Wars, where I want to see the wider world outside of the Skywalkers. And with Star Trek, I'm like, I actually maybe only want to see the stuff that they want to show me on screen. Speaking of Star Wars, boy, was this terrible. I guess I should start the timer if I'm going to say that. Yeah, so this is this weekly series. Again, Alex Segura, maybe better as a novelist than a comic writer, maybe just not the right comics for me. But I did see, I'm not alone in this one. Other people are annoyed. And I might have the wrong cover here. Maybe it was issue 3 that was out this week. I don't know. But either way, I've read it all to this point and I hate it. the whole point is it starts minutes after the end of Return of the Jedi, and it tracks the next 9 months. And it's supposed to be heading for this big conflict, right? The rebels are trying to establish themselves. The the empire is without a head. And then some people from the empire want to establish their own foothold. So it's those, and there's also spice traders. And it's like those four forces kind of like dancing around each other. Well, guess what? It's been 10 issues now of dancing around each other, and we're still dancing. We keep doing the same. I've seen the same scene of Luke and this one bad guy like 5 times. And I get it. Like you can only go so far because you've only been given so much remit from Disney and Lucasfilm to like push so far after. But that means you have the point. You can do good things with the existing characters. You can introduce new characters and not kill them off. There's so much material. Charles Soule did such a good job in the last run of Star Wars, like giving us a character for Lando. And then he's just in here and he doesn't feel like himself. I'm going to keep complaining because I hate this comic so much. And I love Star Wars. So there's this scene where Leia, who, spoilers, is pregnant here because we know she got pregnant pretty soon after the original trilogy based on the age that whatever his name is, Darth Incel is in the follow-up series. And so here she is pregnant and she's being choked by an enemy, right? Shades of Padme. Like, okay, Alex Segura, you're setting up some parallelism here. Interesting, because Leia is a much more active character with much more agency than Padme. And so to her, and she got herself into this because she had a blaster. So cool. So she's being choked and she like hits his hand and then he gets blasted by Han. Again, interesting parallelism because, Anakin never saved Padme. He was the one choking her, right? But then the thing is, the Han basically just 1 page ago was in the Millennium Falcon being like, I should go fly to Leia. And then he just gets here to shoot him in the back. And then they like have a quip. I had it under control. I could tell. Your timing could have been better too. What else is new? Kiss. Like, if you're going to do all of this setup for this parallelism, like do something. If you're going to have pregnant Leia get choked, like Padme got choked, I think I'm doing a lot of heavy lifting here for you as the reader, connecting all these dots. None of it happened on the page. And then it just got tossed away. Like Han flew across, landed in the Millennium Falcon, ran however many miles to get there just in time to shoot this guy in the back. They kiss, move on to the next scene. It's just worthless. I really want to read Survival Street. This is the last issue. So I was like, I'm not going to catch up on the whole. I love James Asmus. So I'm clearly not going to catch up just to tell you about the last issue. But as I think it is it's Sesame Street, but murdery. And there is one initial series, and then this is the second series. So I do want to read it. Okay. I think I might just push through to the end and then see your comments. I don't know. Maybe I'll stop. We're at the 2-hour mark, so I'm really being conscious of my time and yours. Okay. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Nation is an anthology book that's running alongside the new Jason Aaron Ninja Turtles run. It's stuck on ready. Start counting down. Okay. And it has 2 stories per issue. It's going to be ongoing, but it looks like these initial stories are just going to be issues 1 through 4, and then it's going to keep going. So this has one story that's just Raph on his own by Tom Waltz with layouts by Vincenzo Federici and really amazing colors by Rhonda Pattison, who always colors turtles. Then there's a Casey Jones in Japan story written by Eric Burnham with art by Mateus Santaluccio with colors by Marco Lesko. Tom Waltz and Eric Burnham were the mind trust behind Turtles before issue 100 when it was good, before it started sucking. And Rhonda Pattison always defines the look of Turtles with their colors. This book is a home run. Every single issue, I'm like, yes, I love it. It makes me happy. It makes me excited. You don't have to have been reading Turtles. If you read issue 1, it totally explains why these 2 stories are happening at this time. The action is clear. The colors are brilliant. The storytelling is great. It feels like there's stakes, but you don't have to have read. You could start your Turtles reading here. Like, you don't even need to have any familiarity with Turtles. I love it. I love it. It turns out what I learned in 2019 when I read all those comics, I love Ninja Turtles. And I never had read a Ninja Turtles comic until 2019. So then I started really like binging it and being obsessed with it. And then I got to after 100 when Sophie Campbell took over, and it just became it was like, is this a kissing book? Like, it just became Turtles going to punk shows and like complaining about their feelings, which I like. Give me Phonogram, right? But like in Ninja Turtles, it wasn't what I was liking about Ninja Turtles. This is what I like about Ninja Turtles. I'm really excited to read Jason Aaron's run. I haven't yet, but when the next new issue is out, I will read it. There's also this other Ninja Turtles comic, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures. Those Not Afraid. What an interesting books from Kyle Starks. I'm going to say something controversial yet bold, or bold yet controversial. Kyle Starks is who you all think Mark Russell is. He's actually funny, actually pithy, actually good at the one-liners, but he doesn't do the same one-liners all the time. He's got range. He's writing 2 different serial killer books right now, which maybe is a kink of his that he needs to explore, but he's exploring it in comics, and I like serial killers, so I'll explore it with him. This book's about these 2 serial killers that are in the same town at the same time. And they're like, and they bump into each other by mistake. And what happens on this page, they bump into each other. Meanwhile, there's this young girl who has a serial killer podcast, and she's podcasting in this town with these two serial killers. So it's a little bit Dexter. It's a little bit Nail-Biter. It's a little bit Seven kind of. And I am an easy mark for serial killers. It's a trope that I like. So I'm totally into it. The art's a little, it's not super, super finely detailed. Like, these faces are really broad faces. So if you're looking for like really, really detailed line work, this isn't your book. But it actually feels like Mike Henderson on Nail-Biter. So it feels like Nail-Biter to me, not just because of that, the theme, but because it looks like Nail-Biter. I haven't been reading Transformers by Daniel Warren Johnson. I know he's writing it up to issue 24. I don't have nostalgia for Transformers. I was a G.I. Joe kid, but I was a G.I. Joe kid, and G.I. Joes are kind of embedded in this universe, so it kind of holds some allure for me. I read the first couple of issues, and I'm like, I'm just going to binge this when it is all out. And I think I saw it on Global Comics, so like, I will just binge it when we get to issue 24. Ultimate Black Panther. Sometimes I think Brian Hill shouldn't write comics, but often I think that Brian Hill is a brilliant, brilliant writer. How do I put these ideas together? I think Brian Hill is a writer for actors. I think he writes fantastic dialogue, and I think some artists can have the characters emote enough for it, but sometimes he tells them to draw the wrong panel to get the emotion of it. Stefano Caselli is one of the best artists working in the business right now. If you told him to give us a panel where we really are feeling Black Panther say, "For this land, I ask this land, guide my actions," he would deliver that. But Brian Hill never writes that panel. And that's been my problem with all of Black Panther, Ultimate Black Panther. It's a great story. The dialogue is great. The art is great. But it often feels like the framing of the actual panels is fighting against the script, because Brian Hill's a writer for actors. And even if we saw an actor crouching on the ground, they could make us feel that line. This is very decompressed. I don't know how you could be doing this whole, like, each issue occupies 1 month of continuity and be as decompressed as Black Panther has been. But again, the writing is good. The art is good. It's a really cool story about Vibranium versus Moon Knights for control of Africa. It's a really great Black Panther comic. I almost wish it was in main Marvel continuity. I just have a discontinuity between the significance of the words that Hill is writing and them not reflecting what's happening in the panel at the time the words are being said. Okay. We're so close to the end. I'm just powering through, and then we're doing your comments. Uncanny X-Men is one of the worst X-Men comic books I've ever read. This issue was a garbage heap. Gail Simone should stop writing this book immediately. She does not know how to voice Rogue. She does not. I don't care if she is the X-Men writer. I think, can we just go full Dark Crisis here? Gail Simone I've liked many Gail Simone books. Gail Simone is not a big book writer. She's a writer who gets on a book like Red Sonja or Secret Six, or even to an extent Wonder Woman, where people are not as invested in who the characters are, and Gail Simone can take it in her own weird, pithy direction. To put Gail Simone on a big book, it almost never works. And it shows here because she's just wrong about who Rogue and Cyclops are. She's wrong about pretty much how everybody on this team are. The art is great. I actually like the art here by, what is it, Garan on art? Yeah, Javier Garan. I think it's great. Some people complained about it. I'm into it. And I love Matthew Wilson's textured colors, but like, it just doesn't make any sense. Why are these characters a team? Why are they adopting new characters? Why is Rogue having the problem she's having with Colossus? Why does Rogue suddenly hate Magneto? It doesn't track to anything that happened in Cruella. It's this book, and I know people are liking this book, and I think it's a book who just want to see their X-Men looking cool on panel doing stuff. But like, as somebody who's read every issue of X-Men for the past 20 years, it's not an X-Men book. It's just like, it could be an alternate universe book and it would make sense, but there's no. And even if I got over that Rogue is voiced wrong and I don't understand this cast, why does it exist? What is the selling point? It's Rogue got some X-Men that she actually likes together, and they stumbled over some New Mutants, so they feel like they have to do things for the New Mutants, but also they're fighting too many concepts. Why does it exist? Why does Rogue think she needs to lead X-Men? I know that there were some things done with that in the first couple of issues, but to me, it didn't get there. And because there's no concept, and because the writing is so bad, I just hate it. I hate it. And unlike how much I hated the Bendis era, where I just don't vibe with Bendis, but I had to begrudgingly admit that it was really good for Cyclops, and like, it just wasn't to my taste. I don't think there's a taste issue. I do think it's bad. Okay. Hate it. This was the other delightful surprise for me this week. Welcome to the Maynard by James Robinson. I just love this so much. So what if there is this hotel in the middle of a city in California that was magical, and all the magical sorcerers and creatures and wizards you thought were there, but it's just right in the middle of the city. And what if somebody was a new bellhop there and had to learn the ins and outs of the magic world? And what if it looked just like a Disney cartoon from the 1960s? And what if really she's not sure what her place is in this magical world because she's only half magic, and a lot of the staff is half magic? Because if you're full magic, you would have enough money and privilege to just be a customer there. I think this book is so gorgeous. It's so funny. It's so charming. I love Jay Bones' art. I love Ian Herron's coloring. Jim Campbell's letters are really easily readable. They're nice and square. I feel like they could be a little bit bigger for the size of his balloons, but I think he's using a good face for them. It's absolutely charming. And also there's a mystery because they have a sneak thief, like a cat burglar in the magical hotel, and like, shouldn't that be easy to catch for a bunch of people with magic? If anything I just said sounds cool to you, if you love that like 60s Disney animation aesthetic, you will like this book. It's not even in my like fairy tale trope that it's hitting. I just think it's delightful. And it's another one where I was like, oh, James Robinson can be really wordy sometimes, and I just don't know if I'm in the mood for this book. I guess I'll read issue number 1 just so I have something to say about on the stream, and then I friggin' loved it. It's in my top 10. It's near perfect. I love it. I love it. Okay. I don't read What If. What If Galactus transformed Gambit? I heard it was very colorful. What's the furthest place from here? I don't read this book. I read the first issue. It kind of was like, why? It's about these kids. It's kind of like that book I talked earlier, Juvenile. It's post-apocalyptic, but in this book, only the kids are alive. When you turn into an adult, you like turn into like an evil monster. So it's kind of Walking Dead. I really like this team of Tyler Boss and Matt Rosenberg because I love their 4 kids walking to the bank. It's right here on the shelf next to me. I think it's a comic you could use to teach comics. I read the first couple of issues and I was just like, they could all die. Where's the cast that I'm supposed to like? And then I actually read the issue before this to see if maybe I wanted to get back into it, and I just needed to like skip some setting up. And I'm like, when are they all going to die? So if I'm asking when are they all going to die, the characters just didn't hook me. Great art though. Tyler Boss, fantastic artist. We're 2 away from the end, I think. Where Monsters Lie, again, Kyle Starks and his serial killer kink. This falls into the category of, I can tell you objectively this book is not great, and yet I'm obsessed with it because it is the most crisis book out there. There's a second miniseries. It continues the first one. So I read the first one last night. There's a town that's all movie serial killers. There's like a Freddy, there's a Jason. Well, in the first book, there's no Freddy, but some of them are a little supernatural, but the first book is more like low fantasy. So only like a Michael, Friday the 13th is the only like kind of sort of fantastical one. But what happens when they kill in their own town? That's bad news. You don't shit where you eat, as they say in the comic book. So now they've attracted the attention of law enforcement, but the chief law enforcement person who's tracking them down his family was the victim of serial killers twice. So as they say in the comic, not to spoil one of the good jokes, because Kyle Starks has got jokes, he's a final girl. So that series ends with the most ridiculous, amazing twist that I don't want to spoil. And then this continues to another town that has more fantastical creatures. This one has a trio of witches and it has a Freddy. It has much more fantastical creatures, but it's still this theme of like, what if serial killers were ganging together because there's strength in numbers, and what would happen in a grounded real world where that's happening? It's so funny. Kyle Starks is really funny. If you like Mark Russell, you will like Kyle Starks. If you don't like Mark Russell but wish you would, you will also like Kyle Starks. Here's another page. Oh, they did Wicker Man as one of the tropes. Just really, really funny book. And then finally, I think, Wolverine. Did you just see them all like this? And in your mind, I got this from Max, but I thought of my own too. Do you just see them going, is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Right? It looks like Bohemian. Anyway. I don't know what to tell you. So I think the art on this is gorgeous. I think Martin Coccolo is amazing. Colored by Brian Valenza. Valenza really growing is one of my favorite colorists. I like the kind of subplot that's been going on where Wolverine finds this Wendigo who's desperately trying to not like go all the way Wendigo. And he's like really trying to hand feed this Wendigo and bring back his humanity. And I like the A plot, which is that there's this gold living metal, kind of like Extremacy or kind of like Exo Manowar sort of, that is attracted to adamantium and people who have adamantium in them. But we got to the end of 5 issues and I feel like we're just now hinting that there's going to be a bigger story with this living metal. And I do think that Saladin Ahmed has been having that problem on a few of his books, especially on Daredevil. I think this is really good. I think the voice for Wolverine is perfect. I think the art is great. I think if you missed a Wolverine that felt more familiar to you after the very beginning of Benjamin Percy's run, or maybe all the way since Aaron's run, this is that Wolverine. And I like it a lot. I worry it's too slow. And I think, I didn't read Zootopia because I'm not going to read Zootopia, although I do like that movie, but it's written by Jeff Parker, like Red Hulk Jeff Parker. And that's it. We're done. We made it. So glad we made it. Okay. Oh my gosh. So much chat to go back to. I'm going to catch up, but guess what? I'm going to put the banner up because you can ask me anything now and I will see it when I get to the end. And then we got to wrap up. Ooh, okay. Where were we? Blah NYX. Yeah. Bummer to hear. Sync got me. I know. I missed Sync so much and I'm so happy he's back. Look, there's always room for comics to get better. Even Gail Simone's Uncanny, which I truly makes me angry, and Sentinels, I'll still come back for the next issue. And if the next issue is good, I will tell you, I'm not an accumulator. I don't have baggage. I'm always willing to read the next issue by an author of a comic, by an artist, and decide it's good. It's how I started liking Rachel Rosenberg's colors on Moon Knight. I really hated her colors in the past, and then she was a great colorist, and I'm glad I didn't have any baggage because now she's one of my favorite colorists. I'm like that with writers. Is why Absolute Superman is my favorite comic in all of comics right now. And we know how much I often hate Jason Aaron. I always come to new books with a fresh perspective. So I'm hoping Lansing and Kelling can pull out and do well with Sync and do well with NYX, but also I'm a student of data. And I think once comic creators have given you data for me, I'm going to talk really fast and the stream's going to be more than 2 hours. Data for Lansing and Kelling, not the best closers. Ryan Wilson always laugh and Omar said, we did talk about that. Okay. We talked about that too. I got to get better at figuring out where I left off in the comics. Would I expand my theory about the omnibus mapping? No, because we're doing that live on Your Mint Condition next week. Stay tuned. Dark Phoenix is not really feeling the Storm series, even though I love her. You know what? Not every comic's for everybody. I like it because I don't think we just need Storm as an action hero. I like it being a little bit more like floaty and poetic. I like that about it. And so I think it's perfect for me. Love my insights, but frustrating is every time you watch it, I'm adding to my pull list. Well, my pull list was 47 books this week. I think it's 51 next week. I think the thing is, I like to read a lot and kind of figure out where everything is, and then I can step back. Like, I know what Ahoy comics are like now. I don't have to read every Ahoy book. I get it. I know what Vault comics are like. So I think sometimes you got to binge a little bit and like overeat and interrogate why you like the comics, and then you'll know why, and then you can be a little more picky. Not comics, but as a Philly person, I did respond to these already. I must have checked in at some point. Okay, but we're always learning. Hayden got overwhelmed with X stuff during Reign and do want to finish and get caught up. Honestly, I think Kieran Gillen and Al Ewing wrote two of the best X-Men flagships of all time in Immortal X-Men and X-Men Red. Even if you don't read anything else in the line, read those. Ryan, how am I good at remembering everything? The trick is I am terrible at remembering things. I'm good at having external memory. As long as I write something down on the spreadsheet, and especially as the show's getting ready, I have to say it out loud. Then I remember it. But if I don't have a database or anything, then it just falls out of the back of my head. Good afternoon to you, William Lee. Do I think giving Mark Miller a fair chance? I actually like some of his concepts, even though he is as pessimistic sometimes as Jeff Johns. He said Jeff, because I love you guys. But generally, I know two things about Mark Miller. I don't love every pitch, and he does not grab me with a #1 issue as well as he grabs me with a 5-issue arc. So generally, I will try to read a whole Mark Miller series after it comes out because I tend to really get angry with him in issue 1 and then it gets resolved. And I know that. But he's not somebody I do well with him. I like Magic Order, and there's another book of his I like. Also, a lot of his books right now are on like the 3rd or 4th or 5th volume. And just from a logistics standpoint, I have so many other books to catch up on, only 2 or 3 issues right now, that I'm not going to play catch up on a book with like 20. I do want to catch up to Magic Order. I really like Magic Order, but I'm probably not going to catch up to it next week because I still have so many other books to catch up with. Grombeck on Catwoman, get ready for next week because I love it and I'm going to be talking about it a lot. In the first issue, I think it's 69, she has Selena look out the window. There's these 2 undercover cops, and she's like, they think they're undercover because they're the kind of people most people wouldn't see. The people they're impersonating, like a junkie, a homeless person. But I see those people, so they're not hidden from me. And I was like, you get it. You absolutely get Selena's voice. James, Sentinels is the best part. Is only one more issue that the series is done. I did like the deep cut of continuity that they brought in. I thought that was cool. And I like that it was like they saved it for issue 4, but at the same time, in a 5-issue series, that should have been the cliffhanger of the end of issue 1, because then I could have told you who that book was for. Strongest issue of Sentinels so far. That's like saying, I don't know. It's like saying long jump is my strongest Olympic event, Max. Chris, Nick N. Well, Sentinels, 1,000 cool points for the Clue reference. I am unlimited Clue. I could sing you the entire orchestral score from Clue. Dun, 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 dun. I can talk along to it like it's Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's my favorite movie. Hate. Rob Leafield was talking about Sentinels in his podcast this week with a guest, and they were asking, why make this? Who's it for? Exactly. And it's clearly for a lot of people because people are liking it. And I never want to tell you that a comic has to be bad just because I don't like it. And I think clearly it's for somebody, and there are people who are enjoying a look at the humanity of Sentinels. I just think you could do better. I think there could be more roundness given to these characters. The whole pitch that they're all victims of some big Marvel event that involved mutants that hurt them. I love that pitch, but I don't think it really comes through in the comic. It's very on the margins. I think if we spent a little bit more time making their voices more distinct, and this is something that I think Pappendahl does have a challenge with across many comics, although I do like him on some comics. I liked his Astonishing X-Men from the Ashes Infinity comic, but I do think if everybody sounds the same and they're characters we haven't met before, it's really hard to be like, well, this is a book about their humanity. Sounds like someone needs to spend the rest of the year catching up on Hellboy. You know what it is? I can't binge it. There's certain books. We heard me say it, Copra. I can only read like one issue of Copra every like 4 days, max. I have all the Hellboy libraries. I have all the BPRD. I have everything in that whole universe. And it's not that I'm being lazy and like just leaving it. I just can only read a little bit of Hellboy at a time. And so it's hard to binge. I'm the same way with Ursula Le Guin novels. I've been reading The Dispossessed for 400 days because it's so good that I never want to read more than a couple of pages. Never got into Hellboy, read the first series, and that's it. I always wanted to get into it. Well, the great thing is that you could try BPRD or Ape Sapien or any of the other Hellboys. Boy, this was terrible. The delivery's huge Star Trek fan and did not like Defiant at all. Yeah, I think sometimes as much as I like want to bathe myself in like under the waves of like every single IP that I enjoy, sometimes I'm like, you know what? It's enough for that to just be a toy or just be a TV show or just be a movie. I think Star Trek is enough for me. I love Star Trek as screen media. I don't know that I need it as comics. Visited Global Comics a minute ago and it's amazing. You can finally read more indie stuff, revisit some fave publishers. Wow. Thank you, Peter, so much for me and mentioning this wonderful source. Yeah, Global Comics, and it's cheap. I think it was like $6.80 US a month if you subscribe annually, or $7.50. So if you think you'll just randomly check out 2 random weird indie comics a month, plus the image seems like a lot of image, not all of image. I have to investigate further. Maybe we'll like explore it next week on stream. I don't know why I keep saying next year. A lot of image, they'll put their trades on it like after the trade has been out for a while, and that's perfect for me because I tend to like to catch up on image books like an arc at a time and then be a couple of issues behind. Like it. Darth Incel. I couldn't remember his name. I still can't remember his name. Becoming more and more unhinged the longer goes. Well, that's about par for the course for me, Max. Karai going full Cindy Lauper in this issue of Hair. I love that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles book, y'all. Love it a lot. Snot Girl feels like a satire of what O'Malley sees loving in LA. Fun fact, a few months ago, I made Brian look at pictures of my 11-year-old 20-pound Karen's cat Wallace Wells. Yeah, it feels like it's O'Malley really, really poking fun at influencers. I've read a few issues of it, and I actually got issue 16 because it came back after a long hiatus. They basically like limped to the end of an arc and then just stopped, and nobody thought it was going to come back, and then it came back. So I'm like, oh, great issue to pick up on. And it's fine. It's just not my book. It had sex in it, and the sex was fine. Not a prude. Thanks for the stream, Peter. Love my enthusiasm, and I'll see you in the next one. I can't wait to see you again, Peter. Those Not Afraid fun issue reminds me a little bit of Nailbiter. Yep, it does have a good Easter egg. Yeah, okay. So it uses Omnicat. If you ever watch Omnidog and Omnicat, it has Omnicat as a character because Omnicat and Maddie are friends with Kyle Starks. And as I was reading, I was like, isn't that Omnicat's name? And then I just kept reading and I didn't think anything of it. And then after, Max was like, isn't that the book with Omnicat in it? So I almost put it together. Almost. No, oh, William Lee. This shows all Mark Russell slander all the time. But if you like Mark Russell, I really think you'll like Kyle Starks. really go for it. Tell them all Kyle Starks is who they think Zdarsky is. You know what? Harvey Picar's Ghost, you might not be wrong. By the way, I do have the AMA banner up because we're going to do one more AMA and then we got to wrap up. 2 hours and 30 minutes is the end, y'all. It cannot be longer than that. Partially because I don't have the professional version of StreamYard, so there's only so many hours I can stream a month. Going to punk shows and talking about feelings, maybe this has me stalled. Honestly, if you wanted to read Ninja Turtles as just like a show, a 50-issue book, mostly about feelings, it's not that it's bad from issue 101 to 150. It just really becomes like a cutesy book about like having coffee, which is actually kind of fun. But I think it was like the best book in comics from issue 80 to 100. You don't have to start from number 1, just like even like 87 to 100. It was so good that it was just like whiplash. Like I was like, what happened to the cool turtles I had been reading? But honestly, there's a lot of people who probably really loved it, and that's why they did it for 50 whole issues, and that's great. And I actually like Sophie Campbell in so many other contexts. I just did not like, I like her even writing backup stories for Ninja Turtles. I just didn't like her plotting for like main Ninja Turtles. Ultimate Black Panther 12, to me, this is the weakest Ultimate book. The Sorcerer Supreme is very, very cool. I think Ultimate X-Men is the weakest Ultimate book, but we've been over that. Ryan Wilson, haven't been liking the Zdarsky for a while. You know what it is? I think after you get over the newness of a creator and they're kind of going wider, then Zdarsky is a great example. He doesn't just do tropes, right? He's not just always doing sex criminals. He's not always just doing funny books. He's not always just doing domain. So now he's just this well-rounded author. And when somebody's well-rounded, maybe you don't like all of their stuff anymore because they're writing all different stuff. There was one book of his I really didn't like, the one in like the small Texas town. I didn't like it. It just never made sense to me. And I thought I was like off Zdarsky, but then I love Public Domain. I love his Batman. So I think Zdarsky now, I think if you were used to him just being I'll buy everything, maybe we're just in like a new era of Zdarsky where like he's so good at so many things and some of it are going to be for you and some of it's not going to be for you. I'm gonna let you finish, but Tom Seeley wrote the greatest Transformer comic of all time. Yeah, I have no affection for Transformers, so I don't know. I had one Transformers toy, the little purple and green Decepticon, what is this called? When there's and this has been a long time for me talking. When you have a construction vehicle and has the claw on the end of the thing and it goes, and then digs it up, whatever that was the one Transformer I had. Ultimate Black Panther feels really boring and slow. Yeah, I don't understand how the issues can be so decompressed, and he's playing that game that you can only do like one story per each month of real time, like all the Ultimate comics are doing, but how could also be boring and slow and decompressed when you're given the gift of that? But it's real pretty though. Real pretty. Great colors. Doesn't need to be any more Transformers comics. It's never going to be better. That's kind of how I feel about X-Men. If Alan Moore wrote a Transformers comic, he'd still have to question if I'd really need to read it. Well, who would get naked in that comic? Asked a guy at a Valiant about current continuity. So yes, current Valiant continuity goes back to 2012. Okay, then I will start catching up on those books. I was hoping somebody would have said that. Thank you, Ryan. I love me some 2012 Valiant. There's like one book I don't super like, but the art is great. The colors are great. It's imaginative. It's a shared universe you can just pick up and dive in all the way. And I am what? A whore for shared universe. Yes, I am. James Abel does not know what the point is of the Uncanny X-Men crossover. You and me both, sister. Gail Simone writes Rogue like a parody. I was into it at first because the voice was distinct. And I was like, ooh, here's somebody who's like writing a really distinct voice. Like they haven't, and it's not just sugar. Like it's got other elements of Southern to it. But then I realized she doesn't know what to have Rogue say. She just knows the dialect. Birds of Prey, again, take two characters who like only had really been written by Chuck Dixon for like 6 years at that point. Gail is great at those books. Simone is great at those books that she takes over for like something that's maybe been underappreciated and gives it its own spirit. But like that's not what you have to do on Uncanny X-Men. So when a comic is decompressed, it means we're spending a lot of panel time on something that's a small amount of space and we're showing like every frame of it. So like if somebody's like, hey, how much is coffee? 50 cents. Oh, I'll take two. Two, you need that much caffeine? No, one's for my partner. That would be one panel in a Stan Lee comic. In a Brian Bendis comic, that might be 3 pages. So decompressed comic stretches out. It's time dilation. It stretches out things that could be told in a smaller amount of panel space or that doesn't need that much panel space, and it makes it bigger. Sometimes that's because the art is so good and they want you to linger on individual moments of the art. But that was very much a thing in the 2000s, very much a result of Brian Hitch. But I think over time, newer comic authors just write decompressed comics without thinking about why the comics are decompressed. I really need to feel like scenes are happening. And I feel like especially in Ultimate Black Panther, sometimes the whole book is like 2 scenes. And I'm like, well, was that scene so important that we needed 10 pages for that one conversation? To me, that's a decompressed comics. Compressed comics have their own problems, right? When a comic is hyper compressed, it makes you feel breathless. You don't get to see the characters move as much. Sometimes you're being told instead of shown. So it's a spectrum all the way from compressed to decompressed, right? Transformers is good. Not a fan of remote controlled Starscream. I don't know what that means, but I know Starscream's someone that talks like this because he was the same voice as Cobra Commander. That I do know. Logan Wade and like draw. Oh, good. You're explaining decompression. Okay. The stream is amazing. Kane, thank you. That means a lot coming from you because you are a person of discerning taste. I wish you could say, but you're cooking dinner tonight. I actually pieced out on dinner last night because between the eye infection and the dropping the see, but the eyes look fine now. I just couldn't do I usually do a little pop of white on the inside just because it makes my eyes look bigger on camera. And I was like, no, we're not putting anything in the eyes today. James Abel with a review of What If Galactus transformed Gambit. I enjoyed Gambit costume design. It gives me Heat Miser. But the plot was weak. Very few interesting ideas. Yeah, what ifs? You got to swing hard and you got to swing fast on a what if because, you got like 20, 30 pages to tell this whole what if. And I think some what ifs pitch you their own concept. Like, okay, like what if Nova was Galactus's herald, which they did way back in the day? Like that sells itself. The Gambit, like you have to do a lot of heavy lifting to even sell. Like what is the point of that concept? And then you only have so many pages left. Who would I love to have writing Uncanny X-Men now if it was up to me? James Tynion is always my answer. One day he's going to write X-Men. It's inevitable. One day he'll do another, I'm doing superhero for a while. I think Gillen I wish Gillen would just stay on X-Men forever. To me, he's the X-Men writer, period. But he's writing his amazing power fantasy, which we'll get to talk to in the next issue coming out, which is X-Men, but indie. So I get why he's not. Tynion would rock X-Men. Rocket. And Tynion would put together the right group of other people to write. He would be a good head of X. Like he would have the right other players writing X-Men. Kyle Stark's all over the place. Marvel Unleashed is a really cute Kyle Stark's book. It's like all of the Marvel pets on their own mission. It's really like actually funny. Peacemaker Tries Hard, which you've gone your Mint Conditions panel. I did an old reader, new reader with Maddie on that. That's a really great one. All right. I really got to wrap up. Where Monsters Lies have a great logo. Love the H in the end. Awesome. Let me just see if you did any more AMAs. Absolute Wonder Woman, you have to wait until the next issue comes out to hear me talk about it. I got to keep you hanging for something. Don't really like any indie minis and single issues. Yeah, I tend to want to read the whole mini, but I also want to support the book the best that I can because then we don't support them and then they never get a second mini. Have I talked about Power Rangers? I don't have any Power Rangers nostalgia. I put out the call last year for somebody to help me by making a Power Ranger guide because I don't understand it well enough to make a guide. And I got somebody really good who volunteered for it. But then it seemed like they were canceling the comics. So I was like, maybe this is not a good time for a guide. But now it seems like it's still alive. So I have to get back in touch with them and see if they're still interested in making the guide. But I just never watched Power Rangers. So I have no... Did we already diss SEM? UXM? Yes. Peter's now going over the chat. Okay, let me see if there's anyone ask me anything. Nobody really asked anything. Starscream would also be on Drag Race. She tried to come for me, but she was not ready. Check your lipstick before you come for me. That was my Starscream. Apparently, I sold one person Parliament of Rooks. It's on Comixology Originals. It's the Ablaze single issues are coming out now. But if you have Comixology Unlimited, or if you just have Amazon Prime, you can just read it. It reminded me of Neil Gaiman's The Sleeper and the Spindle a lot, which I think is Colleen. I forgot who the artist is. But apparently that creative team has another book, which I've never read. So maybe it's like their other book. But it's very just... It reminded me of... there's an Image book that's like that. That's like a fairy tale world, but it's like the one person's kind of a monster. I can't think of it right now. I'll think about that. Okay, and now we're up to present, and nobody else did any AMAs except for Max Album and Max. When I was in high school, somebody asked me my favorite guitar player, and I said Ani DiFranco because I'm a huge, huge Ani DiFranco fan. And at the time, it's like nobody else does it like her. I now realize Ani DiFranco just has her own way that she plays guitar. That's hugely influential on me. She's not the best guitar player in the world. So I think there's a really big difference between favorite and best. I will always love Ani DiFranco. She does so much with so little. I always say that the key of Ani DiFranco is that there's like an Occam's razor to how she plays guitar, where it's always the simplest thing. Because sometimes she'll tune her guitar in the most insane tuning, but it's simplest for the chord she wants to play, and that's how you can find the chord tuning and find the chord shape. I really think St. Vincent is underrated as a guitar player. I've seen St. Vincent several times live. She can really shred. She was on Jules Holland doing by far the 2 best songs from her album a couple of months ago. You should look it up. Really, really good. Oh my gosh, this chair won't go up. There we go. So yeah, I'm not really a big guitar hero because I'm not like a big like solo. I like people who play really good rhythm guitar. So like really good soloists are sometimes. I love Carrie Brownstein from Slater-Kinney. She's one of my guitar idols. If I could just like harness 10% of her on stage, I totally would. Okay. Ask Me Anything has ended. Well, folks, it's been over 2.5 hours. I'm losing my voice. I'm going to run out of StreamYard time, and I'm going to do a song. Some of you are not into the songs, and that's fine. But this is my chance to play for friends who don't usually get to hear me play music. So that's why I do it. But if you're not into it, that is totally okay. But that's who I am. It's me. So thank you for being on the stream. I will go back and read every single comment. Thank you for giving comments. If there's things you think I can do better for next time, let me know. Clearly, hopefully it was clear. I learned a lot from the first time. Hopefully the video is clear. Hopefully the audio was good. I tried some different things with audio. Hopefully I didn't like clip too much when I yelled and then it never got too quiet. Let me know. If you're not already a supporter of my Patreon, I know there's no video benefits right now, but it really, really helps for me to be able to do things like get the professional StreamYard so I could like actually do big PDFs and what if I had an intro video, right? I think it's like $35 a month. So if 35 of you join my Patreon, then great, I'll go and do it. But also it helps pay for Crushing Krisis. Your new book or your new guide this week was Red Hulk. If you're a $1 Patreon, spoilers, the next new guide, no one else knows this yet, not even Patreon, is going to be a guide to either Magik or Vampirella, depending on how I feel. So if you want either of those guides, although Vampirella will probably be a $2 patron guide because that's indie. And then catch me this week. I'm on Near Mint Condition tomorrow night doing Map My Magic with Oldfell, Riley, and Omar. I'm jamming on comics with Omnidog and on Omnidog's Vault and with Freddie on Tuesday night. And then on Thursday night, we're having a DC Evergreen show on Near Mint Condition. And then next week, we are going to talk about the X-Men Omnibus mapping on Near Mint Condition. So I can't see any more of your comments right now. This is one of my favorite songs they've ever written. It took on a whole new significance for me after I moved to New Zealand because it's about trying to figure out how to let go, and not everybody in your life is permanent. So last week, this guitar didn't really come through. So you got to just tell me before I start. Like, can you hear? Oh boy, why is that? Something's out of tune. Hold on, we got to fix that. Oh, I tuned it up to an F. That's because I'm blind when I don't have my glasses on. There we go. Does that sound like real guitar strumming, Max? Does it sound like a real guitar? It's not just like all twinkly and weird. I'll wait for somebody to answer that. And then I'll play you a song and then I'll see you next week. So thank you for stopping by. Chat was really fun. We're going to try to figure out how to do this in less than 2 hours. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. And the guitar sounds like a real guitar. All right, here we go. This is called Better. Thank you so much. You said you'd never leave, and then you left. You might as well have left me for dead. Oh gosh, I have to turn the comments off because I start reading the comments as I'm singing. All right, I'm turning the comments off, and then I'm just gonna play guitar because it's really embarrassing when you don't know the words to your own songs. Nobody can help you. Fun Krisis story. I was in a musical of The Good Woman of Szechuan, which is a Bertolt Brecht play, and it doesn't have like established music. You can write your own music to it if you want. And I was in it my sophomore year of college, and I had bronchitis and pneumonia, and I got better enough that I could be on stage and sing in it. And on the second night, I went out to sing my song, and I got to center stage, and I was the water seller, and the song went, "Buy my water, I am selling," but it was in 12 tone. So 12 tone uses like every note on every scale all together. And I looked out into the audience just in the way I just looked at your comments, and I went completely blank, and I made up nonsense words the entire song. And that's the one time I've ever been in a musical. Okay, this is called Better. said you'd never leave, and then you left. You might as well have left me for dead. That'll teach me to never, never believe you. If you say never again, you give me no good looks. Cast over your shoulder as you sidle across the state border. Think it's time to collect my thoughts and my things and my wills, to get them in order, cause we were so high on secondhand smoking cocaine lines, and we tried to stay together. Should've known better, should've known better. You know I said that I'd know better, but I lied. You were so solid, like a solid gold dancer. I thought I was the one who knew all the answers, that I could swing you around, sweep your feet off the ground. But I learned my lesson. I can't possess you, I can idolize you, but I'll never forget you. Say, see me on the other side. That's what you're saying, said a goodbye, but we were so high on secondhand smoking cocaine lines, and we tried to stay together. Should've known better, should've known better. You know I said that I'd know better, but I lied. Lines on the table and lines in my mind, lines drawn between us and up in the sky. Each vector connects us to a destination, strings strung out to our next location. You follow your line, and I follow mine. You swallow your pills, and I swallow mine. Follow your line, and I follow mine. Follow yours, and I follow mine. Swallow your pills, and I swallow my pride. Swallow yours, and I swallow mine. Follow your line, and I follow mine. I hope I'll see you on the other side. Hope I'll see you there. Hope I'll see you on the other side. Cause we were so high, and we tried to stay together. Should've known better, should've known better. You know I said that I'd know better, but I lied. I lied. Cause we were so high, secondhand smoking cocaine lines, and we tried to stay together. Should've known better, should've known better. You know I said that I'd know better, but I lied. I lied. I lied. I lied. I lied. Thank you so much. I've been Krisis with a K. This is Crushing Comics Live. Check out crushingkrisis.com. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if you haven't already, it'd be really nice if you join my Patreon, but no pressure. And I will see you again, same Krisis time, same Krisis channel next week here on Crushing Krisis.